OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, it's bang on 7:30. It is a morning where we are celebrating a Republic of Ireland victory. It's Wednesday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Ger Eoin and Nathan with you this morning. Gentlemen, start your engines, please. How are you?
Very well.
Very well. Good morning.
Where are you, Owen?
I'm currently outside Casement Park. We've been up in Belfast now for the last 24 hours or so, looking into the situation here as to what's going on. It's got a connection, obviously, to the Euros, please, as we look to host games in Dublin and in Belfast in 2028. So I was outside Windsor Park last night. We'll bring you some of that a little bit later on. I was chatting to Joe Brolly yesterday. We'll bring you some of that later on, and John Finucane, the MP, as well, as this has already been quite a massive political story, really, over the last little while, how to get this stadium built. So that's why I'm here. But I guess it's probably hard to knock Troy Parrott off the top of the agenda this morning, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll get to Troy Parrott in 1 second. So you were at Windsor Park last night, you were at Casement Park this morning. You're seeing both sides of the divide, Owen. You're bringing peace. You are the emissary of peace that this country... All we needed to do was get a morning sports breakfast show to send you to Belfast to work everything out.
That's how to do it. That's what people will be saying this morning. Yeah, possibly. I apologise for the noise here. The Andersonstown Road is a very, very busy road at 7:30 on a morning as people actually go to their jobs. Just around the corner are the estates that you're going to hear about in the legal challenge after Easter, when the residents try and stop the redevelopment here at Casement Park. There's a big objection here. And what you have is a stadium that you just can't get a sense of whatsoever. It is dilapidated inside. People will have seen the drone footage on YouTube of the elephant grass and the complete overgrown state of the field in there, and you can barely get a peek inside at the moment. So that is the current state of play here at this point. Windsor Park, though, not so much in that sort of state. A really, really nice facility, to be honest. It's very well done up. And a lot of people outside last night would have said, why can't we take this stadium to 30,000 as opposed to redeveloping that GAA ground?
Oh, yeah, okay. What about I'm sure you fixed that with logic and reason. That's all that's ever been needed with the situation in Belfast. We'll come back to that a little bit later on, but if anybody has any comments for us or any smartness that you want to get off your chest at the moment, as Owen queues outside somewhere in the early morning trying to get in. Is this an experience you had outside Berghain at the weekend, Owen, as well?
Exactly the same. All I've done is stood outside for the last 4 days. And you know what? I'm okay with that. There's a sort of inner peace. I've thought about everything. All of my inner monologues have finally been completed at this point. Mission accomplished in terms of what's going on in my head, I think.
Nathan, good morning to you.
That's not really the shot that Tourism Northern Ireland usually give you when you see somebody up on tour in Belfast.
Good point. Yeah, it's as good as I could do. There is a mural basement, and that's about it. There was like a kind of a left behind refrigerator and a skip full of rubbish at the other entrance to the stadium, which I thought might have been more authentic, but no, I said I'd give the artsy side to the stadium.
All right.
God, it's a terrible shame to see Casement Park in that state. I remember being up there, must be 10 years ago, for an Ulster semi-final, Tyrone against Derry. The place was packed, the sun was shining, and just even driving past it in the last couple of times in Belfast, you could see how run down it was getting. Like, it's a bloody disgrace what's been let happen a stadium of that size, because listen, I know Owen's going to get into the issues around the community there and the redevelopment and all of that, but it felt at the time it was set in the perfect location, actually, that there was a real walking up to the ground. It meant something, it carried something. So it's a long way to go from where Owen is standing right now to having a game at Euro 2028.
We'll come back to that a little bit later on, because it is time for us to talk about Troy Parrott and the difference a 97th minute winner makes to the mood music around the team and the sense of confidence they have. Does it matter? It's a friendly against Lithuania. Nathan, explain to us why this matters.
It's hard to explain why it matters. 10 minutes after the game, the Irish supporters behind the goal, the most hardy band of Irish supporters in that singing section, are still there singing Stephen Kenny's name. He's taking their acclaim. Any previous manager over the last decade, a scrappy 1-0 win at home in a friendly on a Tuesday night, I don't think you're getting booed off for that win, but people are just going home. They're getting on with their lives. They're forgetting about it. But there's a connection there with this side that we saw on Saturday, and the noise that greeted both the goals for Ogbene and Brown, and just the general atmosphere around the place, that maybe Irish fans are just looking for a bit of joy and happiness, and they're finding it any little thing right now because we know that there's no major final coming for at least 2 years. But it was incredible, the reaction to the strike from Troy Parrott, which was just a sensational finish considering the game should have been long since over. There's always something a bit more magical about a goal that you think definitely isn't coming. That the game should have been over. I can't understand how the referee was still playing it. But
like the cheating goalkeeper with his pretend injury to his balls. He was like, "Oh, I slipped." Oh.
He's not exactly the Israeli goalkeeper from 2005.
No, it's not Dudo, whatever that guy's name was. But like, in fairness, that's what happens. The wages of sin are death, buddy. You roll around, the referee stops his watch. It's not that big a deal. It's not that much of a mystery. For once, cheating in injury time actually had an impact on the opposition. So I, for one, wholeheartedly agree with the extra 2 minutes.
There seems to be just a complete transformation between the relationship of supporters and players and management, where I'm sure at times over the last 5-6 years, the players wondered on nights at the Aviva when things weren't going well, if these supporters were fully behind them. Whereas now, they know that actually maybe we can take risks. We don't have to win absolutely every game as long as we look as though we're trying. Maybe there's an acceptance among the supporters, a good footballing knowledge that these players aren't all playing in the Premier League, that they are actually out there doing their very best, and sometimes it's not going to be good enough. But yeah, it's a funny time following the Republic of Ireland, and geez, I'd say I cannot wait to get back here for June for whatever games happen for the Nations League.
John Fallon in the Examiner has it that this is our 10th late goal under Stephen Kenny, or maybe it's the 10th late goal in games involving Ireland. It seemed like it was our 10th late goal, double figures, which is fairly amazing. And Kenny talks about it being a characteristic of the team now. I mean, there aren't that many things that you would say we have established, but not dying and keeping going till the very end is something that is definitely there. Like, is that why we're actually saying if this happened once, fine, but it's happening again and again and again, that they're continuing to play to the end?
And I think that's the key. They're continuing to play. It's not stick Nathan Collins up front for the last 10 minutes and hoof it up there and hope we can get a scrappy goal. Like, Ireland had their four best chances of the game came from the 89th minute on last night. And they were all really good chances and would have been cracking goals even before Troy Parrott tucked one away. So they keep doing the right thing. They just seem to up the tempo. The substitutes are always making a difference, has also been key in this run under Stephen Kenny of 1 defeat in 12 games. When players come on, they always seem to add something, and it was definitely the case again last night. Maybe unsurprisingly when he's bringing a lot of the more regular players off the bench. I thought Jeff Hendrick did really well when he came on. Jason Knight was buzzing around the place, and Troy Parrott had his best 10-minute spell in an Ireland jersey. So listen, it's exactly the type of thing you want from a team, that they never give up. They're not going to just roll over when they were struggling at home. And on a night again where they've had 4 goals ruled out for offside, haven't played outstandingly well. It's a friendly. You take your 0-0, you take the little bit of stick you get at the end of it, and you move on. But there was a desperation there to actually give something back, to score that goal, a sense of urgency that they needed this winner, that they don't want to give up this bit of momentum that they have. And those last 6-7 minutes were crazy.
You were obviously polluting the airwaves of Twitter with your late night filth. Sorry, it's called Late Night League of Ireland. So I don't know, did you get to the press conferences afterwards?
I didn't get to the press conferences afterwards, no, but I was watching back a lot of the interviews this morning, and I think Stephen Kenny, as you said, had a big old smile on his face. Troy Parrott spoke very well. Like, geez, what a moment. As he said, it grows up a mile from the stadium to score a goal like that in the last minute to give your side victory. After a week where, he'd spoken very well about how he feels there's been a bit of a sea change in his career over the last 6 months, how he's basically copped himself on, has realised what it's all about and what's at stake, and how he's got to put the head down on and off the pitch. So maybe that goal elevates him to another level with Ireland, and I don't know if it quite puts him in a position to be starting come June, but we don't know if June will be 2 games or 4 games. If it's 4 games, everyone's going to get a game at some stage. Yeah. And suddenly you're a lot happier seeing Troy Parrott come on. Before
the goal, when he was getting possession of the ball in the forward positions and people were coming over to him, in the past you felt like maybe they were going to be able to just take the ball off him or just kind of use their physical strength. Again, equality of the opposition notwithstanding, it looks like he's benefiting from playing man's football against grown men.
Well, physical strength was one thing the Lithuanians had, and they were so well organised that felt at times they were playing 6 at the back. But we commented on it during the game that when Troy Parrott had come on, he was everywhere. So one minute he was picking it up on the left, the next he was picking it up on the right. He was in that sort of floating role and was desperate to get on the ball. He didn't just come on and wait for someone else to do something and stand on the shoulder of the final defender and hope a ball would bobble his way. He was the one who was trying to make something happen. He was trying to create from deep. And playing a full season of first-team football, of men's football in League One, where I'm sure it's pretty grim at times, it has to stand to him. It absolutely has to stand to him. And he's like quite a few of these players. We don't know what's going to happen over the course of the summer. He'll go back to Tottenham. He'll go into pre-season training. There's always the chance that Antonio Conte looks at him and thinks, wow, I haven't seen much of this guy before. Let's keep him here. And Harry Kane does move on and your second or third choice. I think it's unlikely considering Antonio Conte wants to spend a lot of money during the summer. But maybe next season he's a return back to the Championship. He already had some time there. And he just keeps moving up those levels. He doesn't need to be the next Robbie Keane. We all wish he was the next Robbie Keane. But maybe it's just going to be a slower process than we thought for Troy Parrott. But last night felt like a gigantic step forward for him and hopefully take some confidence from that for the rest of the season.
Is Jason Knight now ahead of Malumbi when it comes to selection for the first team and first choice to try and change a game?
Oh, I think he's well ahead of Malumbi at this stage. Malumbi didn't really get a look in over the last couple of matches, and Knight offers more in an attacking role. If you're looking at winners and losers from last night, which often in friendlies you are in terms of who can force their way into the 11, I think Jason Knight was probably a bit of a winner in terms of Will Keane didn't take his opportunity. So if Adamina isn't fit, you'd expect for the biggest matches they'll return to Callum Robinson leading the line. And Jason Knight, even though he didn't have his best game on Saturday, probably offers more in that he can link up with the midfield, playing just behind with Shidozi Ogbena. So I think absolutely Knight is, if not in the 11, he's next in line for one of those roles. So the fact that Malumbi hasn't seen much game time probably shows that he's fallen down the pecking order a little bit. The other big winner from last night was Josh Cullen. He didn't play a minute, but neither Brown or Howerhan really took the opportunity. And maybe it was unfair in them in that, Howerhan isn't an exact replica of Josh Cullen. He always wants to do a little bit more and get to a bit more of an advanced position. And maybe that partnership in the middle of midfield just doesn't work. Maybe Howerhan would love to be in there alongside Josh Cullen and see what would happen then. But it does feel as though he is the one guy in that Irish team right now that is sort of irreplaceable. Like we've Conor Coventry in the 21s and playing exceptionally well with the 21s, who is having a full season with MK Dons as well. Maybe he can make that step up in June or in the games that come in September, October. But everywhere else, you've got options. You've got that bit of depth, real depth where actually there's not a great difference between one player or another player. But Cullen seems to hold the whole thing together right now. And if he's not there, you wonder who can do that job.
Yeah, the other thing is that the under-21s won in Sweden to really reignite their possibility of qualifying for a major tournament. It was a 2-0 win, interesting mix of types of goals, and the performance is certainly winning rave reviews. It's as you say, they were missing a bunch of players who were playing with the seniors and also a bunch of players who were injured. So all of a sudden it looks like that next generation, we have strength and depth coming through. Whether or not any of them are actually going to end up playing for the first team, who knows? But if you look back, somebody was also making the point that I think it might have been Brendan O'Brien in the Examiner, that 5 of Stephen Kenny's under-21s are now playing with some regularity for the senior team. And if we were to get another 5 to come through over the next 2 to 4 years, then all of a sudden that dearth of players we had making it the step up to senior international level, that period will be over and we will be able to look forward to the future with some hope.
Well, I think we are, because I think the expectation is that Ireland should always qualify for a European Championship with the amount of teams to get through to it. And that's what I mean about depth, that I think when you look at rugby depth charts, as we discovered, yes, it's all very well been able to name 4 or 5 players in the same position, but is there actually any depth behind Tadhg Furlong? We know who's next in line, but there's a big step down. We're actually, with Ireland, and maybe it's not the most positive thing, there's not a big step down in almost every position. And in fact, in the next 2 years, I think the centre-back position is going to be fascinating. Like a back three of Nathan Collins, Darragh O'Shea, Andrew Bomadele, which could have happened last night if Bomadele was fit. That's bloody exciting to see those 3 next in line behind Coleman, Duffy and Egan. And maybe the 3 of them don't get there over the next 2 years. Maybe Egan, Coleman, Duffy, 1 or 2 of them are still first choice selections. But all 3 of those players in their late teens, early 20s, look primed for big careers. Then you got Jimmy Dunn coming through after that. With Joel Bagan from the 21s last night at Cardiff, who's having a fine season, who maybe is an option out on the left-hand side. So there's a lot of good young players coming through, and like for the 21s to qualify would be a ridiculous achievement. They're still going to have to go through a playoff in all likelihood, and they have 3 games in June as well. So, I'm sure there'll be conversations about it, but I can't imagine a situation where Stephen Kenny is releasing players back to the 21s
Not at this stage, no.
Get them to qualify for a tournament. But they've got 3 games, but Italy and Sweden, who are the top 2, still have to play each other as well. So if Ireland can go and win the 2 other games before they have to play Italy in the final match, it should be enough to get them to a playoff at least.
Okay. And I presume around the bars of Windsor Park last night, the Republic of Ireland match was in every pub. You got to see it.
Of course. I mean, and if it wasn't on when Troy Parrott came on to the roars of his home crowd, I think every television in the land here just came on to see what they were doing down south. I guess also as well, Northern Ireland were getting beaten by Hungary, so who wants to watch that? Yeah,
fair enough. How excited are you now to get, Nathan, when Ireland beat Lithuania in the 97th minute with a winner? How excited are you allowed as a commentator?
I think it's right up there with how you'd imagine qualifying for a World Cup would be, Ger. Isn't it? Right?
Yeah. We did bring you live an exclusive commentary of Ireland-Lithuania and Off the Ball last night with Nathan and Stuey, Byrne and commentary. Safe to say the lads got a bit excited with that late Troy Parrott winner.
Hourihan's cross is a dangerous one. It's hanging there, comes out to the edge of the area, falls for Parrott.
Oh!
Troy Parrott in the 96th minute from 25 yards out. It's like Steven Gerrard in the cup final. That sort of finish from Troy Parrott to steal a victory and to send the Aviva Stadium absolutely wild.
Just like Steven Gerrard in the cup final.
It was a very similar finish to Steven Gerrard in the cup final.
I would have said Stevie G's final goal in the cup final went straight in the corner, did it not? That in my head,
it was a low drilled volley.
Okay, that was it. They were exactly the same.
Well, I didn't say it was exactly the same.
Look, it was excellent.
It's radio. You're trying to describe to people what happened.
Just look at Steven Gerrard's goal.
What do you want me to say?
Steven Gerrard's goal is basically from like the halfway between
when you do look back at Steven Gerrard's goal, the more you look back at it, the more impressive it is. It's about 40 yards out.
It's unbelievable. It is absolutely.
That's the last kick of the game.
It is absolutely unbelievable. Last kick of the game. I will give you the similarities. They were both the last kick of the game. It's kind of where it ends. But look, fair play to you, Nathan. You did well. It was difficult.
Well, it was Stuey. Stuey lost his mind a little bit more than I did. That was the biggest roar. That was the biggest roar you heard. Again, there's always something brilliant to say about goals that people are leaving. People that thought it's not even injury time anymore. The referees, the next time the ball goes out of play, it's over, it's done, 0-0, on we go. But for those who stuck around, which I think was almost everybody, we should do a hall of shame of people who left early.
Got to beat that traffic.
There definitely has been like a couple of commentaries, Nathan, you'll remember better, where the sound has just gone momentarily because of the noise of the commentary, I think.
Oh, well, Shane Long's goal, the big moment where Stephen Hunt kicks the machine we use, the ISDM machine used, out of its place, and we just went off air rather than luxuriating in the moment.
I thought it was just a pure sound, because I thought there was something with Robbie Brady's goal as well. I was going to say that you could put Troy Parrott scoring a goal in a friendly against Lithuania into that company with those 2 goals after last night. But it is the best outcome from a friendly, is that if you're going to win it, make sure a kid gets an incredible moment that may actually be a real kickstart for him. Because Andorra was obviously a huge moment for his Ireland career, but this is different, as I say, in front of his home crowd, which I'm sure was cheering on every kick of the ball he had last night. Like, this feels like, I mean, we won't know for a while, but it feels like another potential arrival for Troy Parrott.
I think you're right as well. It comes off the back of a period of sustained form and appearances in senior club football, and because at that stage I think he probably had more minutes really in senior competitive. Well, it wasn't even a competitive game, but it was kind of fringy how often he was playing for Ireland versus how often he was playing at that stage for Spurs, and he's got a lot of game time now, so he is beginning to deliver on his promise. Right, the reason that you're in Belfast, Owen, is because obviously the Euro 2028 bid is going to see games in these islands. There is a suggestion that some will be in the south, some will be in the north. There might not be any in the north because there might not be a stadium for it. But we did send you to the streets of Belfast to gauge the feeling ahead of the joint Ireland-UK bid for Euro 2028. If it was to happen, Belfast should be integral to the bid.
Absolutely unbelievable. Can't wait for the GAA to absolutely travel all over the Euros. Hopefully we qualify.
Excitement, absolute excitement. Couldn't be better for all the nations, the 5 countries, bringing people from all around Europe to England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and Ireland. It's absolutely fantastic. Shining a light, the positivity is coming out of in particular our country here, and North and South. Brilliant.
I think it's a brilliant idea for Northern Ireland. Obviously, since Euros, there's been real hype around the national team, and I think to host potentially a massive tournament here in Belfast, it would be amazing for the city and amazing for the local game as well.
To me, it would be unforgivable if we didn't get at least one match without having to go anywhere else, bar Windsor Park. OK, it only holds 18,500, but it's a flipping good ground, so it is like. That's a good ground, but there you are. We are where we are.
To be honest with you, they should have built this for a 30,000 stadium when they were doing it. Yeah. So it is, because this is the home of football in Northern Ireland, so this is where it should really be played. I
know this stadium was built a number of years ago with a joint bid, in particular with Linfield and Northern Ireland. Speaking to some Linfield fans now who follow it, they're sorry they've done that because they find Windsor's now not appealing to them as a football club, as a football stadium. Whereas if it had their own purpose-built national stadium that could have incorporated all the sports of the Ireland, would have been far better. I think it would have been used as one big venue. But unfortunately it wasn't to happen. We could have had Ulster Rugby, we could have had the GAA, and we could have had the football all in one place.
And do you think you'll be able to have games here?
Yeah, of course. Look at that stadium over there, it's unbelievable. It's class.
Great idea. Yes, if we can hold matches here in Belfast, it'd be great. Yep.
Just have to make that bigger.
Build up the cup and get 30,000 in here, no problem. Yep.
Is there a better chance of that happening than them redeveloping Casement in time?
Yes, I would think we should make Windsor bigger, get more fans in, and we'll certainly fill it all right.
Confident that it'll happen for the UK and Ireland. Whether or not we have it in Belfast is a different story. I'm hoping that having staged the Super Cup here, that UEFA might give us dispensation to have it at Windsor Park. Politically, I don't know if I would go ahead at Casement.
The first thing I thought of is we've nowhere to host. So if we're going to host them, it would only have to be down in Dublin because we don't have stadiums big enough unless they get the works in Casement Park sorted out and it becomes more of a national stadium. It's the only way around it, I would say.
Well, I don't think there's much chance with the size of the stadium at Windsor Park. It's out of question. It's just a matter whether or not Casement Park will be built in time or not. If not, there's not going to be no chance of it coming over here.
Would you be confident that they can get that done in time?
I very much doubt it.
What are the confidence levels around Casement Park getting done anytime soon?
Well, first of all, you have to have an executive. And what we've got was, if I remember correctly, the Royal Victoria Hospital was built on a lunatic asylum. And now they seem to have moved all the lunatics to Stormont. So as far as I'm concerned, we'll never get it.
I don't think there'd be any problem Northern Ireland playing at Casement for the vast majority of people, but we still live in Northern Ireland at the moment, and I think there's a divisive election coming up which won't help things, but another 8 years down the line or 6 years down the line or whatever it is, who's to say that we don't play a game at Casement Park?
The only chance here would be if, and it's a big if, Casement Park has ever been redeveloped. This has been going on for 10 flipping years. The only places on the island of Ireland that I know of would be obviously Aviva Stadium in Dublin and Croke Park in Dublin. But if the IFA up here was to sort of contribute money or contribute organisation, it wouldn't be fair if we didn't get some sort of match.
The Casement thing, in my opinion, I've watched that quite closely over the years. It'll be 2058 by the time they get any decision made on that one, to be honest. But hopefully they do, because it looks like a fabulous project. GAA
is not my sport, but in the interest of fairness, I think it needs to be redeveloped, because it's been lying. I used to drive a bus up and down the Falls Road. I had to pass Casement Park all the time. But now it's just a wasteland, really.
Sure, maybe in 6 years, never we're here again, we might have government and...
This is Northern Ireland. Things take an awful long time.
Wow, okay, so a lot of realism there from the fans outside Windsor Park. The GAA, I think they refer to themselves there in the middle of that, Owen?
Yeah, that's it, the Green and White Army, isn't it? That's I assume. Unless I'm completely missing the point there, but yeah, like you're right. That's a real dose of realism. I think kind of asking them the question was generally their excitement levels around the Euros. I think it's going to happen, and the constant refrain there, as you heard, was, well, can they get Casement done? So I think there is a lot of people who think that the stadium behind me is the very thing that links the possibility of having the Euros coming to Belfast. There are obviously a couple of voices in there who you can kind of tell from the undercurrent of their tone. You could probably tell from my accent as well what they were going to say or what they weren't going to say. You can tell from the undercurrent of their tone that there will be an issue playing football games in Casement Park. They don't want the GAA playing in Casement Park. And I think it's fair to say that about some of the undertones that you would get from people. And some of the people who perhaps didn't talk to me outside the stadium last night as well, I would say that there might be a bit of conversations that need to happen with regards to actually getting everybody on board and getting everybody into the stadium where to host games in 2028.
All right, it's 7:56 this morning. You're watching OTB AM. We're brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. We're going to have more about an All-Ireland football team. We're going to hear from Vinny Perth around about 10 past 8, his assessment of where we are after the two friendlies, Sports Pages and John Duggan. And then we're going to talk about the Football Pod, the latest episode with James O'Donoghue and Paddy Andrews, and then we're going to hear from a few other people involved after 9 o'clock with Owen in Belfast, and then more reaction from last night as well. John Finucane and Joe Brolly around about 10 to 9 and 9 o'clock this morning. Now, the next one is about an All-Ireland. How do you couch this when you're standing outside watching fans go in to watch their team, and you're like, we're going to take your team off you. So how do you feel about us coming and stealing your team?
What you do, Ger, is you ask a few questions first, and then you make a decision whether or not you want to ask the ridiculous one at the end.
So, let's play it.
Yeah. No, I would never support a Northern Ireland team. Quite frankly, I just wouldn't do it, simply because I've supported Northern Ireland all my life. I remember, my earliest memory is whenever England won the World Cup in 1966, being at the old Windsor Park and Bobby Moore coming round with a cup. That's my earliest memory. Then, of course, you get married, family comes along. Northern Ireland had to go to the side until I got a bit older. I follow him everywhere. I go everywhere. I've been to Russia, Israel, Azerbaijan, you name it, I've been there. And I'm off to, hopefully, Kosovo this year and Greece. That's my plans.
Both are trying to pull two different ways, and I think our talent is such that we would be a better organised, a better team as a one island team. But the heart and the soul of a Northern Ireland team would always be with us, and I don't think that is. It's certainly not an acceptance for me.
From a personal perspective, I don't like it. I think both teams are doing amazingly well at the minute. And I think that's brilliant for both countries. For us, I struggle to see how some of our guys might fit into an All-Ireland team, and I think that limits opportunity at the elite level. So personally, I'd love to see it stay the way it is. And 2 years ago, we went down and played the Republic 0-0, and it was a brilliant game. All the fans loved it. Both teams loved it. I think it just keep it the way it is.
Again, it's because I'm a Belfast man. Everything would have to be in Dublin, which I wouldn't want. Like, I'm sorry if it sounds awful to you. I'm not trying to be awful. I've always supported Northern Ireland. That's a team I will always support. I would not support a Northern Ireland team. Nothing for any sectarian reasons. Just the fact is, I'm a Belfast man.
I honestly don't think it would ever happen, because there'd be too many hardliners on both sides that wouldn't want it to happen. So I don't know. It's a hard one to answer.
It's certainly not the case amongst Northern Ireland fans. And I'm sure it's not the case amongst Ireland fans either. It's, why would you? Do you want a Welsh and Scottish team combined? Would you want an English team? No, it's two different football associations. It always has been. And it's not an orange and green thing. It's not. It's just purely football terms, because you just can't stop supporting one particular team and then move to another. In my opinion, it wouldn't work.
The two of them maybe someday, I hope, could be amalgamated under one big, like the way the Ireland rugby is. But whether that's down the line or not, I don't know.
What the big problem is, since a Good Friday Agreement came in, where the island of Ireland was stated, a player who was born anywhere in Ireland can play for either Republic or play for Northern Ireland. I personally think, and I'm not being sort of sectarian here, I personally think that's wrong. If you're born down south, you play for the Republic. If you're born in Northern Ireland, you play for the Northern Ireland team. See, a lot of the young lads are coming up through the Northern Ireland works, that under 21s, under 17s, blah blah blah. And at the last minute, they're deserting the ship, shall we say, and going to play for the Republic. I think that's wrong.
Personally, for me, no. If you look into the sort of the history of it, and the Irish FA in Belfast was the sort of the host of the original Ireland football team, you know, I think the status quo is fine how it is, you know. As long as Ireland's still two separate countries, absolutely, I would prefer to see the two separate teams together.
Like we've shown in the Euros, there's many videos going around Facebook of Republic and Northern Ireland fans singing and dancing in France, loving their time. So I don't understand why, you know, we can have success in both parts of the country, I'm sure.
I can't understand. The rugby seems to work, you know, with
hockey.
And the hockey, you know, and it works, you know, I mean. But I suppose we hear when the trouble's been so bad for 50 years, and you know that yourself, it's just orange and green.
Colours, red and blue or green and orange.
That's the way it works.
That's what it works down to, really, basically. Not being unpolitically correct or whatever, but that's what it boils down to, the green and orange and the red and the blue, and the twain shall meet. And it's just horrible.
Ironically, he's wearing a blue coat with an orange lining to the game. Very thoughtful stuff there, Owen, really. And you know, it is the horns of a dilemma. Say there was to be a United Ireland, do we keep the Northern Ireland football team and allow people who follow that team and identify as British within a United Ireland to continue to play, or is it like, no, sorry, that's just it now, that moment has passed and that team gets written out of history?
Yeah, and like I think that's the interesting perspective on it, is that it would be our team. Sorry, it would be the team of the South that they would see as being the team, and it is that team subsuming the Northern Ireland team is what their view on it would be, as opposed to two bodies coming together to create one new body, which may have to be the way it actually turns out to keep everybody happy. But it is interesting there when you're chatting to people, some people bring it up themselves that I mean, you don't even need to push them there. They bring up the whole rugby team themselves, and that being an example for how things should operate. And then possibly more to the point, certainly around facilities in this part of the world, a lot of people bring up the idea that they should have built a multi-purpose stadium instead of redeveloping Ravenhill and Windsor, as you heard earlier on in the other piece. And maybe there's a lesson for other countries and other sporting bodies there as well. That's how you get stuff done. You try and bring everybody on board, and you try and give them one good facility, as opposed to trying to build three modernised, brilliant facilities into one city when things are so tough to keep everybody happy in.
There's a big lesson there for facilities around the rest of the Republic of Ireland as well. Oh, and we're going to let you go. We're going to hear from you a little bit later on as well. Stay safe outside Casement there.
Right.
3 minutes past 8 this morning. Nathan, I don't know if you want to weigh in on the question of a United Ireland football team.
Well, at the moment, obviously, players who are born in Northern Ireland who want to play for the Republic of Ireland can do. So any player who was born in Northern Ireland who wants to play for Ireland, you know, the Good Friday Agreement allows that. I think the politics will dictate and football will follow afterwards. And as you heard from the people Owen spoke to, maybe it was the fact that they were willing to speak to Owen, that they were a bit more in the middle around these things and didn't want to be on camera with more extremist views. There's a lot of people in Belfast who just like their football and have a great history of following Northern Ireland from back in George Best times right the way through to Euro 2016 and all the fun they had over in France, who I think, as they rightly point out, if there was a 32 county Irish football team, would end up playing their games in Dublin, and that football is gone from them and that history is gone from them. And we can say, well, we'll play one game up in Belfast and one game in Dublin. We know what will happen. The games will be in Dublin. It'll be the bigger stadium. It'll be the better facilities. And that those football supporters will be lost. And I'd imagine in the grander scheme of the conversations that are happening, they won't really be an afterthought. So I understand completely that there will be a lot of reservations from Northern Ireland football fans about seeing their team massively diluted.
Okay, we're going to speak with Vinny Perth in just a little while about the Republic of Ireland's two friendlies. You did have a full late night League of Ireland international special last night. What was the general tenor of the stuff that people were saying?
Again, it was relatively positive. There was nobody throwing toys out of the pram that after 96 minutes were still scoreless at home against Lithuania. And remember, after 89 minutes, I'm not sure Ireland had a shot on target if you take away the 4 offside goals that were disallowed. And I think in the stats they won't count because obviously they were offside, and certainly 3 of them were very straightforward decisions. Maybe the Howerham one you could argue against, but I think there was somebody standing in front of the goalkeeper. So a bit of frustration at times that in the midfield in particular. I think that Howerham and Brown didn't take their opportunities. Like, part of me did wonder last night that the aim for Stephen Kenny was bedding players into the system. So do you need to play 3 at the back against Lithuania? Maybe he's going to play 3 at the back against everybody, regardless of their quality. But last night it did feel they could have taken somebody out from the back 3 and gone with another attacking player, somebody more creative in midfield. But obviously the main aim was getting Nathan Collins and Darragh O'Shea into a back 3 and understanding that system, and Ryan Manning in left wing back and knowing exactly what the different roles are. And maybe looking at the midfield and Howerham and Brown and thinking, these are 2 experienced players. I know what they can do. They'll fit in where I need them. It was quite repetitive, was the one frustration that it was just Howerham and Brown's job felt to be just get the ball to Doherty and Manning and cross it in. And like, we had a dozen corner kicks. We had twice that in terms of crosses, and half of them came off a defender's arse and didn't get past the first man. And there was nobody trying something different. There was nobody dropping a little bit deeper against a team that had this unbelievably low block, who just sat back, who tried to pick a pass through them.
And who
maybe
should have
that
done
player
that?
isn't there.
I'm going to ask, who is that
Callum
player?
Robinson or Ogbene. Maybe it's not Ogbene's strength, maybe it's the pace and the power and trying to get him behind, which just wasn't there. I actually thought Ogbene did quite well at times in trying to do something different, but there was no space in behind at all to make a run. And Robinson didn't have a good game. He took a couple of wild shots in the first half. He's the one who feel has that pass that can unlock a defence. They weren't helped by the fact that Will Keane had a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. You could tell whether it was the occasion, whether it's just that's just his level. His basic control let him down 3-4 times in the first half, and good Irish moves broke down when the ball came to him. So I'm not sure whether he'll get too many more opportunities. But that maybe where Troy Parrott comes in. I know Stephen Kenny said in the post-match press conference that Parrott sees himself as a number 9, and he feels that that's probably where he'll end up. But maybe Parrott can play in a role, in a number 10 role, where he played at times with the 21s, just off a striker, and do something to unlock a team, because that's the player we're missing right now. That's the player in a slightly more advanced role. When a team does sit right back and you're going to face them, like Armenia were beaten 9-0 last night by Norway, and Armenia in Ireland's group in the Nations League. So you expect they're going to be coming to Dublin thinking we're going to sit back as far as we can and make sure that doesn't happen again. Who is that guy that can actually pick apart a side, that has that killer ball?
Am I all right? Jason Knight is Jason Knight, because he just dropped the shoulder at one stage and went past somebody last night, and I was like, wow, this is great.
Possibly. I don't think we've seen it quite enough from Jason Knight as of yet. And that's the thing, 1 or 2 changes, like a Cullen maybe brings Ireland a bit deeper. He's the one who gets the guy to make the killer pass into a better position at the right time. You could tell last night, half a dozen times in the first half, the centre-backs telling Alan Brown to basically go away. Like, there's no need for you to drop back here and take the ball off John Egan. John Egan can bring the ball 20 yards into their half and nobody's going to touch him. But they were trying to do something different and get the midfielders on the ball earlier. But we don't have that world-class talent right now who...
No.
And you just hope one of those can develop into that, because listen, we're sick saying it. One player at that level just makes an almighty difference. Gareth Bale's performance last Thursday, and listen, Gareth Bale is at a level of a player that we may never get to again, but it was like watching a 10-year-old playing against 6-year-olds, even at international level, at how he could change the game.
Even at international level, for somebody who hasn't kicked the ball in anger in a long time at this stage. Our group in the Nations League obviously includes Ukraine. It's Ukraine, Scotland and Armenia, as you said. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the story is, whether or not games will go ahead, and if they do go ahead, what kind of a situation is going to happen. If, let's assume those games don't happen, it's a tricky enough group with Scotland in it, because Scotland are, you would say, a much better team than Ireland at the moment.
Yeah, they've got a spine of Premier League players. Like, you even look at that midfield of John McGinn and Scott McTominay. Like, McGinn just seems to be getting better all the time. Even they brought in Shea Adams, who feels like an Irish style striker, plays in the Premier League for Southampton, doesn't score a huge amount of goals, but he still scores a lot more goals than any other Irish player. I think he's 7 this season, and we're struggling to get an Irish player to get 2 Premier League goals. So yeah, Scotland have quality. They've Robertson, they've Tierney. They have a better squad right now than Ireland, and certainly a far better squad than we met in the qualifying campaign under Martin O'Neill, when we went to Scotland and we were beaten. So Scotland are going to be very difficult. Obviously, we just need to wait and see what happens with Ukraine. And Armenia, like, losing 9-0 in international football means that they could well be out of their depth in Group B. You expect that game will definitely happen. But the Nations League, I feel Sheehan and Kilbane, the confusion that they sowed in the Irish public with their explainer a couple of years ago has almost devalued the Nations League. I'll say it again. This tournament is maybe the most important one. If the Republic of Ireland win this Nations League group, Ger, Stephen Kenny will be in charge for the World Cup campaign in 2026. You can nail me to that one. That is how important this is. The benefits of winning this group are so great that I think it would get Stephen Kenny a new contract again, because you're guaranteed a World Cup playoff for the Euros at the very least, absolutely guaranteed. You would feel that the momentum you have from winning the group would mean that you're probably going to qualify for the Euros anyways. But also, you get promoted to League A. You're going to be playing some of the best teams in Europe. You're going to be bringing the best teams to Europe to a packed Aviva Stadium. You're going to be selling even more season tickets. The financial side, which is obviously important for the FAI, the reward of that would be absolutely huge. So these games for Stephen Kenny are as big as anything he's faced so far.
Our best hope would be that Scotland don't take it seriously, because they do well at the, you would make Scotland
well, there's a possibility. There's a possibility. So if Ukraine can play games, that Scotland play Ukraine on that first weekend on the 4th of June, and Ireland then play Armenia, and then they have to play Scotland or Ukraine. And both of those sides have been focusing on World Cup playoffs, and they put all their emotional intensity into that. And when Ireland have to face Scotland, there's not quite as much there. But there's 4 games in the space of 10 days. It's pretty much unheard of in international football if they were to all go ahead. So you're looking for a little bit of depth in squad. And again, I think Ireland do have that depth of, doesn't really make a huge difference in terms of which 3 centre-backs it is, which 3 attacking
you say that now.
which goalkeeper it is.
You say that now, but we have seen that, when COVID ripped through the squad, the strength and depth was not as great as we thought. Things have improved, definitely. And
things have, and I think COVID has added to that strength in depth as well, that actually a lot of those players have ended up getting a lot of games.
But we're not getting either Omar back for those games. Like that,
I think you'd have to say it's highly unlikely.
Yeah, and even if they were back, they would just be back like by the skin of their teeth. So I don't know. Maybe you get Ida back. I'm not sure. But it would be difficult for them to find form. And then all of a sudden, if anybody else starts to get injured, Will Keane might start 2 of those games.
Jeez, he'd want to be a lot better than he was last night.
That's the thing. It's all of a sudden, we're saying, we've got strength and depth, but actually, as your depth.
Well, I think the obvious thing there is you play Robinson as the number 9, which he's done a couple of times, which I think has worked, because then in the 2 positions behind Robinson, you do have a lot of options, whether it's Parrott, Knight, Ogbene, several other guys who can come in. Maybe Mark Sykes starts to get an opportunity. But if we have injuries, other teams will have injuries. Scotland will have injuries. Nobody's going to come into these games at full strength for every match. But they'll probably need to get it sorted out relatively soon. I'm sure everyone will be patient with what happens with Ukraine. But it's hard to see Ireland playing Scotland and Ukraine, because the priority for them is obviously they need to get the World Cup playoff sorted.
Okay. Nathan, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers, Ger.
If you wanted to listen back to the immediate post-match reaction last night on LOI Late Night, you can get it on Twitter Spaces. We'll put the podcast up on our football feed in just a couple of minutes' time as well. We do understand that there are still issues with some of the OTB podcast feeds. It will be a massive help to us if you would slide into our DMs and tell us what ones you're experiencing some issues with. So if, for example, you're not getting your OTB football feed or your OTB rugby feed, and you're using Pocket Casts or you're using Podbean or one of those other podcast app providers, then it'd be great for us to know that, because we can make contact with them and tell them to get the finger out and fix it on their side. All of our stuff is actually working properly, and that's why it's kind of frustrating from our perspective that this hasn't ended up working as smoothly as we hope. But all of the problems we had before Christmas have been solved, so the podcasts are there. They're right there for you. You can go and get them, I promise you. But it would be massively helpful for us. We put a box up on one of our Instagram stories as well. If you can fill in any details on that, even what type of phone you're using, whether or not it's Android or Apple, that would be a huge help to us. And sincere apologies on our behalf about any of the issues you might have had, because we know that we're interrupting your patterns and people don't like that. So anyway, a reminder, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to go back to Belfast before 9 o'clock, and we're going to talk football next with Vinny Perth.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Are you a fan of the small ball?
We're walking into the stadium and this fella comes running up to us, needless to say, head to toe in Wexford gear, and hits me a pat in the back and says, "Goodbye, Skyhead, about time we got a bit of respect in the ranking."
Jealous of all the inside analysis and crack on the football pod? Well, we've got you covered with the Hurling Pod. Join myself, Will O'Callaghan, along with James Skehill and Paul Murphy for the best insight this hurling season.
I'm not as dramatic now as James. Dramatic? You sound like my wife now.
Subscribe to the Hurling Pod feed on the OTB Sports app now.
How tough was it, that journey of rehab and just the injury itself?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like anything in life, really, actually, until you experience it yourself, you'll never truly understand. And you would have had the names of Rihanna Jarrett, Ciara Rossiter, some of those big names that, we would have heard about tearing the ACL, and you would have thought, God, how unlucky they are to have even done it multiple times, and how shit a journey it must be. But Jesus, do I know how shit it is now. And that's not really to scare people off. My heart goes out to Sav, who's just done hers, and other people it's happening to all the time. And it isn't the end of the world. It's fine. You'll get through it. And yes, there'll be tough days. But yeah, I mean, it teaches you a lot. People actually always ask me, unfortunately, obviously I've been through cancer treatment as well. And people always ask me to compare and contrast the two, which is a great question. And definitely, I think from a mental standpoint, when you're an elite athlete, and that's just part of who you are, to have that taken away from you is almost more destabilizing than going through something like chemo. And that may be weird to hear, but with chemo, I could still play a bit of football. I could still run. As an athlete, we run, as athletes, we run every single day. I couldn't do that properly for 9 months. And that is just, not having that adrenaline rush or anything for so long when you're so used to it, it really messes with your head.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance PLC.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Yeah, very strong stuff there from Chloe Mustaki in the break. That's her on this week's edition of the Koi Gig Pod with Karen Duggan and Pearl Slattery. It's brought to you in association with Cadbury FC, official snack partner to the women's national team. Now, to go back to last night's football, I'm delighted to say we've got Vinny Perth with us. Vinny, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning. How's things?
I'm going to start with a quote from Napoleon. Ability is of little value without opportunity. I'd rather my generals be lucky than able. Nothing like a little bit of luck at the end of the game to go the way of the Ireland manager, who, has, fair to say, wasn't particularly lucky in the first 10 games of his reign. But, I think he's going to be pretty happy with how things finished last night.
I don't know. I always felt he was a lucky general. I think you have to be. But there's no doubt in the first sort of part of his reign he wasn't lucky, but we go back a lot of stories over the years where he had a fair slice of luck, and you need that to get to the highest level. But no, there's no doubt at the start of this campaign we weren't lucky. So I was shocked how much injury time was played, and I think if that was a game of competitive nature, we would have heard the opposition really complain about it, because I think it was near 7 minutes when the goal was scored in a friendly. 0-0 friendly. Normally the board goes up and it's 2 minutes, so it was and believe it or not, I think it could be a big moment as well. Little moments like that where Troy obviously getting that brilliant goal, and you could tell what's the word for that, togetherness around the squad, the way they celebrated it in terms of players off the bench. Seamus, Duffy went to congratulate him, so you could tell it meant a lot. You can tell there's a building of a squad there and a team, and it was a really good moment for them last night.
Nathan made the point that 10 minutes after the full-time whistle there were still a massive amount of fans behind the goal as well. And look, we're trying to talk about a friendly against Lithuania, and at the same time I think you're right. I think that there's more to these little bits when you're trying to build a culture and you're trying to build a sense of identity. And what that identity of the team is, it's definitely a team that doesn't give up. It's a team that plays to the end. And it's also a team that has this very close link with the fans. And the manager has a very close link with the fans as well. And it's been a while since we've had that.
Yeah, I think the public relations, and I don't like using that word because I don't put that on Stephen's head. But the public relations, a lot of people and politicians can learn a lot from the way Stephen has managed himself. He's come across as somebody who's man of the people, a football person, and they've really got behind this team. There's no doubt about that. So last night was just another moment in that. I think there's no doubt there's a team ethic development. All good teams have to have that, or else be that good that it doesn't really matter that a world-class player can score a goal for you at different stages. So I would have said on this show over the last couple of years spoke about club teams like Wales, the way at the Euros they created this sort of yes, they had Gareth Bale for the big moments, but it was almost like a club culture. And from the outside looking in, I see that developing within the Irish squad. And once you have that, I think you'll go a long way in international football. So all of them things seem to be working well together. So again, as I said, small win last night in the sense of what was at stake, but these little moments are huge. They're huge in terms of it's only the coaches and the managers really that look back to these moments in league campaigns when someone scores a goal. I remember going back years in 2014, Darren Meenan, we were 0-0 in Athlone, and 93rd minute, one of our players dived and Richie Towell scores a penalty and we win the league. For me, that was a huge moment. For everyone else, it means nothing. But that's what football is all about, these little moments. And last night was one of them that hopefully are part of bigger success down the road.
When you're talking about the Welsh example, what are the signs you're seeing about this Ireland squad that remind you of that kind of sense of them being more club than international at the moment? I think unity. I think now, particularly a coach who's worked around, even in Ireland in League of Ireland, the scrutiny of what you do on a daily basis in a club is huge. And I obviously had that scrutiny at a different level for different reasons at my last club. But I think you're getting such an insight into what players are thinking now because of social media, because of whether it's the FAI media team putting up training videos, etc. And you really get the sense that there's a unity about this team. There's a togetherness. There's you can see Duffy, Coleman, these people, real sort of strong characters in the dressing room. And you can just see, as I said, the joy the players had for Troy Parrott last night. Not just the celebrations look after themselves, Aviva Stadium, last minute goal, but it was actually when the cameras continued to roll and you see Callum Robinson came over to him,
different people going towards him. I think that was I think it's little things like that where you can see that development. You look at someone like Chidozie, you can tell he's infectious the way the players speak about him, and modern day players don't have to do that now anymore. They don't have to go out of the way. They can give you the sort of boring answers that you won't like in terms of radio contact, but they don't seem to do that around this squad, and it's a real sense of a team developing there.
Yeah, and so they set out the friendly against Belgium. Okay, you'd expect that, but then everybody knew Belgium weren't going to bring their superstars, and they still sold it out. And then there's a huge crowd last night for a game against Lithuania, and despite the fact that we can't score for 96 minutes, there's this sense of positivity around the team. It's amazing how quickly things can change in football.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think we need to be careful as well. I mean, you listen. I happened to listen to yourself and Johnny discussion yesterday morning, and you're like, no, it's not all rosy in the garden either. There's areas of improvement. Last night was an area of concern in terms of a weaker team, and so if you put this into a group context, when we play the European Championship qualifier or World Cup qualifier, we play a seeded team, either first or second in an international window. And that second team that's below us in the seeding, we've got to do better against. And I still think that's an area of improvement for this team. We were very lucky ultimately to win the game last night, that last minute goal. So that's an area of concern. I know there was some changes, but we've got to do them things better. So there's loads of improvement. There's loads of areas that get better. I know we say that the squad is developing in the sense of strength and depth, but there's a lot of players very similar. And I'd have some questions on last night. Could we have done things better? Whether that was shape or whether that was personnel.
Let's get into them then. We've spoken, I'd say, historically over the last couple of years, a good bit, Vinny, with you specifically about the number 10 role. We don't seem to have anybody at the moment who's particularly comfortable. And was that the main issue last night, that there wasn't actually anybody who was doing something slightly different?
Yes and no. I think I would question, and it's difficult. It's difficult for me in terms of how close I am to people within the setup to be critical. I would question. And it is so difficult. If you've got a style of play, the 3-4-2-1, whatever, different variants of that, that's Ireland's style now. We've developed into that. And I think that works against a lot of the top nations. Where I'm not personally in favour of that system is when you play against a team that's going to sit in, you've got, for example, you've got Matt Doherty who gives you the width out wide, but and at different stages you've maybe Chidozie running into the wide area. The difference in a slightly different system, whether that be some variant of a 4-3-3, is if Matt Doherty was playing fullback and he had an out-and-out winger ahead of him, you'd have two and you'd create 2v1s in the wide area against teams that sit in. So I think the shape against these teams is something, personally, I'd be a bit disappointed last night that in that, because it was a friendly, in that flip over between a top nation, being Sweden, and then going to a team that we should be, with 78% possession in the first half. Didn't create an awful lot. People are saying we'd 4 goals ruled out for offside, but they were offside, and you wouldn't get them in a game, particularly if VAR was in. So that's a concern. I think the number 10 position, I think Will Keane, I've seen him at Wigan, I've gone and seen him live there. And people will say, well, it's League One. They're about to be promoted, hopefully, to the Championship. I think that's good for Irish football, like them and Rodder to get promoted. But he's an outstanding number 10. Didn't really play. He's not an out-and-out centre-forward for me. So I wonder, could we have changed the shape up a little bit last night against a lesser nation and maybe tried something different? We'd nothing to lose. Or else, like, the management are entitled to say, no, we're 3-4-2-1 team. But that's a concern for me, because we have struggled against those type of teams that sit in against us.
Do you think
the results haven't been good?
Do you think that maybe there's a case-by-case basis here? So let's spool forward to the Nations League, and it's Armenia. That maybe when he's not giving Nathan Collins a start and he's not getting Darragh O'Shea back into the team, that he might actually go and play a different formation for that game, because he'll have had his first choice. He'll definitely be picking his strongest team for that competitive game. There'll be no rotation of players. That actually, in that instance, that maybe last night was a horses for courses selection, that they wanted to give Collins and O'Shea game time in that 3 at the back scenario, because if, for example, the injuries are what we think they might be in the summertime, we're playing Scotland and they haven't played there, then it's a huge leap for them.
Yeah, but the only issue with that is we're not stuck at centre half. It's not where our real problems are. They're not problems as such, but where we've got to get better is in midfield areas. So, and look, it's okay if you're Chelsea, because you're going to win most games playing that system. It's okay if you're Man City and you say, we're not going to play centre forward today, we're going to dominate, we're the best team in your league. It's okay to be Shamrock Rovers in League of Ireland, because you know you're going to have most of the ball. But Ireland aren't any of them teams. We're not the best team. We're middle ranked in most groups we'll come into. We're looking to punch above our weight. And I only asked a simple question. Did we miss an opportunity last night of trying a different system, different shape in a team that we're going to dominate against? So do we need 3 centre-halves? I take your point, and I would imagine that's, if I had this out with Stephen, I'm no longer, that's no longer my role in life, but if I had it out with Stephen, he'd probably make that point you've just made. But I think modern day football is all about different systems, managing the opposition. and coming up with different scenarios. So you will find that I think we played really well under Steve against top teams by and large, and we've struggled under teams that aren't as good. So that's my area of concern. What we can't do is, when the Euros come around or World Cup come around, have an amazing performance against a Germany or a Belgium as we did tonight, and then drop silly points against a team because we don't have a cutting edge and we're short of that number 10 position, as we keep saying. I mean, Alan Brown looks like a goal threat every time he plays for me, but it doesn't mean we have to start Alan Brown every time, but come up with a scenario where someone like Alan Brown can come into the team when we play the lesser nations. But again, probably repeat myself a lot there, but
it makes perfect sense. And the opportunity cost on one hand is that you will go into a big game without your young players having experience of the system you're going to play in the big games, and the other side of that is that you don't know what to do against the lesser opponents. So if you'd had your opportunity,
that's why you played the big bucks share. Like, to be fair, and it's easy for me to sit here and come up with a different argument to it. That's all.
So what would the other formation be if you were actually trying to build a team to beat Armenia? You know, because those points are going to count as much in the end as and if you drop those points, they're the ones that end up really wrecking your CV. So what would you have done last night, for example?
Well, for example, last night, could we have played with 2 8s of, like, you look at Horan, who I think is a highly underrated player. You look at the position he played for Aston Villa at that time, where he had Jack Grealish. He was outstanding at times in terms of that number 8 just off the left-hand side. Grealish was allowed roam. So if you imagine, you replace Grealish with someone like a Troy Parrott playing ahead of him, then Horan covered that position. He's done it before, club level, at the highest level, Premiership. Brown as another number 8, and somebody sitting in behind him in terms of that type of midfield.
So Josh Cullen, basically.
Josh Cullen, obviously, yes. In terms of that position, can we get, Matt Doherty is a fullback. If Enda Stevens is fit, another fullback, and say to them, right, we're playing Armenia here. Like, if you think of our current shape, a lot of our attacks are down the centre of the pitch. We're hoping that Robinson and Obenya spin out to the side. But against a team that's going to sit in, make the pitch really narrow, then you've got to hurt them down the sides, for me. And that's where I would have went with a different system last night, or certainly would have asked the question or went to it at some stage in the middle of the game. Now, it is difficult, trying to teach people how to play in these systems. But I think the modern day player can adjust the systems. They'll go back to their clubs, these players, and play, like, they play all sorts of different systems. As I said, go back to Will Keane. He plays as a number 10 for Wigan, and he's outstanding at that role as well. Alan Brown plays in all sorts of formations. Sometimes he's a wing-back for Preston at a really high level, the Championship. So probably a little bit of a missed opportunity for me, but I completely understand why you do it. It's about getting results at the moment. It's about the rhythm and the pattern of play. And I think the system we have at the moment is brilliant against the better teams. So be under no illusions. I'm not criticising the way we're playing. I think the way he played against Belgium was excellent, caused some huge problems. And if that was a competitive game, albeit Belgium would have better players there. I like the style of what they're doing. I just think we have to have a plan B and start to develop that over the next number of months.
Have you seen any or significant evolution in our style in the last 12 months?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think we all know we started with a flat back 4. We played with 1 number 6 and 2 number 8s. It didn't work. And I'm calling for that to a point, but it didn't work against good opposition. We were too exposed in the midfield at different stages. But I think when you go back to last night, for example, because it was the second game in a campaign, and again, that's where we need to learn from. I think Chidozie wasn't as explosive as he was against Sweden. Still played quite well. I thought Robinson wasn't as explosive again as he was the other night. So again, that's why we didn't look at plan B. But how we developed, we've got the ball forward a little bit quicker, not direct, not long balls, but we've used our pace and our movement down the side. People haven't really noticed, but at different stages against Belgium, the interaction between the front three with Jason Knight, sometimes as almost like the false 9, was brilliant. He went up the pitch and back the pitch. he was excellent. I think he's a real find. I think it was only a matter of time before people seen the quality he had. I know everyone's talking about Derby now, but we would have spoken the show maybe 9 months ago, and we were speaking about Jason Knight might overtake the Conleys, the Parrotts of the world in terms of the squad. So the pool of players have really developed, but we've a lot of players that are very similar. That's the concern. Like,
yeah,
we've a lot of good centre halves, a lot of good midfielders.
I'm out of time here, but what's Jason Knight's best position for Ireland, and does he have to start? Because it feels like he just brings. Now maybe he can't start every game because he's so young and the explosiveness won't be there game on game. But like, I want him in the team.
Yeah, I think it depends on the opposition, and that's. In one sense, that's a lazy answer with a lot of detail behind that, because it depends on the opposition. If you look at the position Jamie McGrath played against Portugal, I think he's brilliant at that position. But I also think against, for want of a better word, if we're going to stick with this shape against lesser opposition, he could play much more central and allow Robinson and Chidozie play in those areas, as we spoke about, those sort of half and half centre forwards in between the opposition fullbacks and centre halves. So I think he's right on that limit where, yes, he's a bit like Josh Cullen. He sort of slowly came into the team and now probably deserves to play. And I think if he got games over the summer, I think once the summer is over, he'd head into the Euros as one of our starting 11. I think he's stepped up to the plate. It'd be interesting to see what happens with my club level as well, because it looks like Derby will go down. So. Yeah. Will he end up at a championship club? And I think that's okay. I think a longer discussion, we must get into it one day, but I was looking at something over the weekend and I could only count 12 Premiership players, and I was including Evan Ferguson, who got some game time at Brighton, so he's just a young lad coming through. It's okay to have a team, going back to Wales, of championship players playing at really good standard week in, week out. That's a really high level. The level of the bar, like back in 2012, we had nearly 40 players in the Premiership at Premiership clubs getting some game time when we qualified for Euros that time. So the numbers are right down, but it's okay now to be championship based for the Ireland squad, with a bit of sprinkling magic on top of that would be good enough. So yeah, it's certainly a lot of positives. As much as I went on about a bit of negative there, a lot of positives. Things are really come together, and stuff we said would happen has started to happen.
Vinny, good stuff. Great to have you with us. Thanks a million.
Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.
That's Vinny Perth giving us his thoughts there this morning on the Republic of Ireland situation. Always thoughtful in the aftermath of those games. It's 8:37. If you want to get in touch, a reminder, you can do it on YouTube. You can leave a comment in the YouTube stream. You can use the hashtag OTBAM, or you can get us on Twitter at OffTheBallAM. OTBAM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. It is time for the papers.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse.
I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
Ah, no, Eamon, come on, don't be, no, I'm not having that, no.
You know, you're a sub-editor. You don't get it very often in the... I'll go. Ireland are going in the right direction. Steve Briggs yesterday in her press conference. This is OTBSports.com. New Champions League format gives safety net for non-qualifiers. That is total spoofery and bullshit. And then virtual insanity is there. We'll get to virtual insanity in a moment, but I was just making the point that, you know, you exist off Broadway if you are a sub-editor of the newspaper, and then once in a lifetime the moment comes along where you just know that you're producing your best work and you are going to be Tab of the Morning. Who is Tab of the Morning?
Slick as a Parrot, is that the one?
We're going to have to judge these. We do have Tab of the Morning?
Well, how do you do?
Tab of the Morning.
See, Slick as a Parrot is good, right?
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
I'm very good at these things, by the way, just to blow my own trumpet.
Welland of Troy. I like this. This is left field.
This is for the intelligent people.
This is Helen of Troy, right? Well in of Troy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that is excellent. Welland of Troy is the Sun. Slick as a Parrot is the Mirror. Troy Wonder is the Irish Daily Mail. But it has to be. It's the Late Late Troy Show.
I like the other one, the first two.
Which is the back of the Irish Independent. And then you think, I've done great work today. But then it's also on the back of the Star. Somebody else. They didn't steal your homework.
You wonder, did they know? Is there kind of a conference call or something like that?
Great minds think alike.
Yeah.
But how sick are you? It's like, yes.
Yeah, I've got it, yeah.
And then,
well, the supercalifragilistic.
Well, that's obviously the all-time great.
Yeah.
But like...
I used to do these in college.
It lands and you're like, no, they got the same one.
Yeah, you'd wonder what the postscript or the aftermath or the big conference call this morning is going to be like. We thought we had them, but I suppose the thing about it is tomorrow's another day.
You mean, you have to forgive me, but Media House sold the Star, didn't they? And the Star is now owned by the
Reach.
Yeah.
So the Star.
But there would have been a short period of time where the Star and the Indo would have been in the same building, and if that had happened at that stage,
it'd be killings.
Well, who saw it first?
It was like the microphone. You used to get a big kind of bonus whenever we ever got the microphone into pictures in the paper back in the day.
50 quid.
Yeah. You get a note from like one of the big bosses if you got a microphone in. Like there was this strange things to get judged on, you know.
Where was this?
Back in the day, and I think it was back in 98 FM or Today FM as well.
So everybody went about supplementing their income by
making sure they were front and centre, which you should be anyway when you're in a scrum.
So sorry, you used to be good at headlines. Is that what you were?
Yeah. That was one of the things I was good at. We had in college where you were as well, myself, Ger. There was the Trinity manager was called Terry McCauley, and he was really unhappy about a game, and they lost 3-0. And I just put Macaulay Sulkin.
That's excellent.
And we lost in the hockey to Nace. It was Nasty.
And
I must speak to Tommy Rooney about. We'll try and get something up now every morning.
Did Macaulay Sulkin come for you when he?
No. I think he enjoyed it. Terry McCauley, he was a great Irish football man. Still is.
Right, it is 8:41, 8:42 this morning. What did you make of last night?
Look, we have issues around creativity against weaker teams. Obviously, we need a Wes in there if we can. I think it was good to see Ryan Manning and Nathan Collins play well. I think Troy Parrott, everybody's been raving about him for years for a reason, and that was one of the reasons last night, which we saw. The goal was really well taken from outside the box. I
think the other thing about the goal is that, like, I am going to seize the moment. I am not going to quail before it.
He did that in Andorra, and now it was a nothing game, but he still did it. He still grabbed it, and he's done that from behind now.
It's a nothing game that Stephen Kenny really needed.
Troy Parrott has that, and if he can apply himself, and look, it's good that he's playing for MK Dons. He's nearly played every game this season. If they can get maybe to the playoffs, if they get promoted, like he's going to be a number 9, as Stephen Kenny said in the presser. He's going to be a centre forward, and you just hope he gets the confidence now. And it's hard to break through. It's harder than it was in Robbie Keane's day to break through in England than it is now. I think we have Stephen Kenny here, and he says it's been a great week.
I think it's been a very beneficial few days. The game against Belgium and the game today, and the support we've had has been amazing, really, from the Irish supporters. And I think that will bring itself into the Nations League game. I think it'll be the atmosphere at the Nations League games, the home games in June will be absolutely electric.
It's funny that Stephen Kenny has staked his position out as extremely positive, and sometimes I feel it's a little bit too much, but this is the way he's going to be, and he's not going to change for anybody, and I have to admire that.
Yeah, and the supporters behind the goal were certainly, they're on board. There's a hardcore of people who are believers.
We didn't know this, you see. We didn't know this until COVID.
No, we weren't sure, yeah.
We weren't sure of it.
And maybe in the aftermath of the Luxembourg game, they wouldn't have been, and there would have been booze after that.
Well, that's it. So we're here now in a much better place than we were a year ago. Poland and Portugal through to the World Cup. It's hard to get into the World Cup. Like, North Macedonia went down 2-0 to Portugal. Bruno Fernandes with 2 goals. Poland beating Sweden 2-0. Robert Lewandowski on the mark again.
Mo Salah out.
Yeah, like the lasers thing was so wrong, you know.
Just if anybody hasn't seen this.
Yeah, they were shining lasers on Mo Salah when he took that first penalty for Egypt. And Sadio Mane scored the winner for Senegal. It's the second time it's happened. Happened in the Africa Cup of Nations final. Happened again last night. I wonder will there be any tension between the two of them at Liverpool now for the rest of the season. Ghana, Chris Hughton's involved there. Morocco, Cameroon, Tunisia, all qualifying for the World Cup in Qatar in November. When Harry Maguire's name was called out at Wembley last night for the Ivory Coast friendly, some of the England fans decided it was in their best interest to boo him. and Gareth Southgate was pretty disgusted.
I thought the reception was a joke, absolute joke. What he's done for us, the way he's performed for England has been phenomenal. I don't get it. So we're either all in this together or we're not. And he's in an England shirt, and not only should you support a player in an England shirt regardless, but when he's played at the level he has and got us to put the performances in for us he has, it should be total commitment behind him.
I mean, what the England fans are going to England fan, right?
They're going to be pure gammon, some of them.
Like, this is the same group of fans who charged the turnstiles at Wembley.
Yeah, well, only a few months ago.
Made it an absolute disgrace of themselves. Like, this is the firework up the whole brigade.
Yeah,
you know?
strange people.
What do we expect them to do?
Strange people. Declan Rice, actually, and Jordan Henderson coming out on social media in defence of Harry Maguire, which is not what you want to see. Wonder where this row will go between Cork and Kerry now. Well, not that Kerry are involved, but the Cork Senior Football Management writing to the County Board to express their desire to have that match in the semi-final of Munster played at Porky Rin on May the 7th. So the Munster Council favouring, it's understood, the game being switched to Killarney, as Porky Queeve will not be available because there's an Ed Sheeran concert on a couple of weeks before, and it'll affect the pitch. So obviously there are financial considerations here. How much money will an Ed Sheeran concert generate? Porky Rin at best maybe could hold about 15,000, Killarney 38,000. Cork haven't won there in the championship since 1995. They lost there by 22 points last year. You can understand, therefore, especially with Cork surviving by the skin of their teeth in Division 2, why they want the game at home.
Porky Rin are nowhere and there's talk of a strike.
Yeah. So where this will go and what the Cork's County Board's backbone will be around it will be interesting. But Porky Queeve, cost a lot of money, didn't it?
It hasn't been the best investment that we've made in Irish sport in the last while.
And if you're going to invest over 100 million in something that is possibly sitting more idle than it should be, and I know like you might not fill 10 to 15 to 20,000, but it would be amazing if you saw Cork City play there every Friday night.
This is time for Virtual Insanity.
Yeah.
So it's 8:47. Let's do Virtual Insanity.
You have entered Power Drive.
This is the Texas Open. If you have a winner here, it matters just as much as if you get a winner in the Masters next week, right, folks? So it starts in San Antonio tomorrow on the PGA Tour. Profit is at 17%. This course designed by Greg Norman is the Oaks course. It's par 72. You got to drive the ball well. It can be windy. You need good ball strikers here, but you also need a bit of touch. A bit of an all-round game really required here. Starts at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Be sure to shop around. A fifth of the odds of first 8 players on offer from a load of bookmakers. Rory McIlroy is the headline tip because for 5 each way at 8-1, there's absolutely zero pressure on Rory this week. It's not Masters week. He's not going to be sitting at home thinking about the career Grand Slam. He's going to be playing this week. He was second here in 2013 on his only start. We know that he needs to produce 3 rounds, not 1. It was 65 at Bay Hill, then it was a 66 of the players, not 1 round, 3 rounds. But he wants to be free with the swing. He is clearly the best player in this field. He's fresh. He didn't play in the match play. I'm going with Rory as my headline pick at 8-1 for each 5 each way. Second one is Anirban Lahiri at 100-1. I couldn't believe the price of this guy who was second to the Players' Championship, played so well. I watched this last year. He was 5th on his own. His form is spotty, but he's carrying serious momentum in here, Anirban Lahiri. And if momentum is anything in sport, I think he's a good each way bet at 100-1 for 3 each way. The third one is Chris Kirk at 33-1 for 3 each way. He carries 2 things in here, course form and recent form. So the recent form before a miscut of the Players was 3 top 15s in a row. He ranks 15th in strokes gained total this season. His form in Texas not too shabby either. 6th last year, one of 3 top 10 finishes in the event in his last 6 starts. He's due a win on tour, Chris Kirk. Kevin Streelman is our 4th selection for Euro 50 each way at 50-1. Once again, playing well, 7th at the Valspar Championship last time, 6th on his last appearance at this course back in 2019. Course form, recent form for Kevin Streelman. Dylan Fratelli is 80-1 for Euro 50 each way. Lives in Austin down the road. Won the Cottage Championship with the University of Texas. Has made 4 cuts in a row. Was 20th here a couple of years ago. He's never missed a cut here. He's a strange type of player in that he comes out of nowhere and does something, Dylan Fratelli, but I think another win could be in the offing for him. And then the rank outsider I'm picking this week, a French player, Paul Barjon, 300 to 1 for €1 each way. Was 10th at the American Express back in California in January when he was the 54-hole leader. There was actually a satellite tour event, the Corn Ferry Tour event, played at this course back in 2020, and he was tied for second. So he's got course form, he's a rookie, he's learning his way, and of all the outsiders, he was the one I liked. Paul Barjon at 300 to 1, Dylan Fratelli, Kevin Streelman, Chris Kirk, Anirban Lahiri. I really did like this week at 100 to 1, but the headline tip, Ger, is Rory McIlroy.
Price up the odds on Tiger appearing at the Masters?
Even money.
Right, do you think he's going to do it?
Well, why would he be going up there yesterday with his son and everything? Obviously he's testing. It'd be a very Tiger thing to do, to turn up when Phil's not there.
Perfect timing.
Just to let you know as well, the Shane Warne Memorial Service starts at 9 a.m. 50,000 people at the MCG. A stand will be named in his honour. So look, a sad month, but they're going to pay tribute there.
All right, John, good stuff. Thanks a million for that. It's 8:50 this morning. This is OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're going to cross over to Belfast next, but first let's have a listen to James O'Donoghue and Paddy Andrews from episode 10 of season 2 of the Football Pod. Here's how they reckon Kerry Mayo in the Division 1 League final is going to go.
For Sunday, do you reckon Kerry will win this game? I have a sneaky feeling for Mayo. If Mayo go
I think it's very 50-50.
I like Mayo this year, lads. I have to say, I didn't think I'd ever say it, but
yeah,
still, it's nearly Dublin waiting on Con O'Callaghan and the difference he can make. Mayo with Cillian O'Connor coming back. Now I know it's hard to know when he'll be back.
So hard to know.
Kind of shape he'll be in. They've lost Tommy Conroy as well. Like Ryan O'Donoghue is very similar to I feel what McCurry's done. He's had a brilliant year under his belt, and you can just see he knows he belongs now. He's so confident. He's leading the Mayo attack. And you're thinking, imagine Conroy just unfortunate with the injury. Jason Doherty's back. Cillian O'Connor is the comeback.
They still need somebody with O'Donoghue. I think
to win the All-Ireland, they're going to need Cillian O'Connor to come back. Jason Doherty, like I say, is like a new player for them. But they'll need Cillian coming back and reaching even close to the levels he can get to. And then they are right in the mix. I think they've as good a chance this year of winning the whole thing as they have in any other year over the last decade when they've come very close as well. But I hope they could go and put the full team. You never know what may have in the National League. I know, Jimmy, you were slating them last week, but I would imagine they'll put out the full team and go to take Kerry on Sunday, because I would say I think they're the two best teams in the country at the minute.
Yeah.
I'd put them above Tyrone, above Dublin, obviously, throughout what's happened in the spring. And it's brilliant to see if both teams go hell for leather in Croker. Big crowd, good weather. I think it sets us up very nicely for the championship.
Do you know what's going to be interesting? This is possibly the All-Ireland final as well, isn't it? The way it pans out. That if both teams win their provinces, they'll avoid each other in the semi and meet in the final.
I think Galway give Mayo a rattle down the Connacht Championship as well.
They will, 100%, they will. But, so they could play it 3 times, right? They've played already in Tralee. They have this game. So this is the one where you learn everything for a possible All-Ireland final. So we spoke about what Mayo were going to do with Clifford. Mm-hmm. You know, are they going to put Oisin Mullen back there, or are they going to do more of a team defence?
But do you save it? Do you save that move?
No, you can't. You can't, because it might not work then. Okay. So you have to see, does it work?
It's like you're getting a free go and testing it out here.
You are. And what do Kerry do with Rouen, who was outstanding in Tralee? You have to put someone on him. Are they going to do that?
Jack Barry or Dermot O'Connor?
Yeah, someone's going to have to look after Rouen, because Rouen is so dangerous attacking. He just has to be looked after.
Yeah, I don't know what you do. Do you reveal your hand and give everybody the opportunity to watch some videotape, or do you keep everything absolutely secret, completely vanilla, until you meet again in an Ireland final? I don't know. But that's, as we said earlier, why they get the big bucks. Obviously, metaphorically speaking, in the GAA, as opposed to actually. It's 8:53 this morning. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. Hashtag OTB AM. Or, of course, you can text us on 0879 180 180. Now, that was, as I said, episode 10 of the Football Pod. You were listening to James O'Donoghue and Paddy Andrews speaking with Tommy. You'll get a new episode every Tuesday morning from 6 o'clock, wherever you get your podcasts. And the best place is the OTB Sports app. Yesterday afternoon, Owen caught up with Joe Brolly and MP John Finucane in Belfast City Centre to find out where we're at on the redevelopment of Casement Park at the moment. First, let's have a listen to Joe Brolly speaking with Owen Sheehan.
The history of it's important, so that the Casement Park project was
if you like, it was going to be a sort of a compensation for, 30 years of neglect of the GAA and the fact that we were entirely self-help. There were, I think, 1,000 council soccer pitches and I think 2 council GAA pitches. So, you were coming from a history of discrimination and neglect. And what happened with Casement Park was that in order to make it a cross-community project, the GAA effectively brought rugby and soccer with us. And soccer got their new stadium, rugby got their new stadium, and the GAA still, Casement has got elephant grass and is infested with rats. And, what was such a vibrant place to play football whenever I was playing. We played down in the Ulster semi-final there in 1982. It was like an All-Ireland final, 40,000 people there. What an atmosphere, what a place to play a game, a brilliant surface and all of that. So that's the history of it. The real problem has been that the GAA hasn't, in my view, understood how to properly engage with the residents. I think it would have been easily done. They could have built up tremendous goodwill if they'd had the right people dealing with them. And what we see is that the residents, a small number of residents, admittedly, have felt backed into a corner and have, it's a bit like a neighbour dispute that goes on forever and no one can remember how it started. They take up entrenched positions and then it becomes their daily life, their daily obsession. And so whenever the planning permission was granted the first time, the residents immediately engaged. It's always a good idea to, if you're going to judicial review, to engage the man who wrote the book on judicial review, which is exactly what Mr. Justice Schofield, he was then just Mr. Schofield was. He was the leading authority on judicial review here. Picked it apart, and the project was struck down. Now we're back again. Planning permission has been granted again by Nicola Mallon, and now there's a new QC on behalf of the residents. Again, I feel strongly that this could be resolved, because but for the residents' objections and the judicial review, we'd now be laying the foundations for this magnificent new stadium that we badly need in West Belfast and in the greater Belfast area, just to regenerate all of that area.
Theoretically believe in the power of sport for good, not in a place like this, but in all places around the world, because it gets spoken up about, it gets glorified so much when the Euros bid is the headline grabbing thing, bringing people together and all that.
Well, it's certainly a power for good in the amateur context. Professional sport is truthfully an ugly place. It does bring people joy to a certain extent, and all of that. And there's no doubt that it is it is a power for good on the whole. But in our context, sport has a dramatic transformational effect on our communities, our families. The building block of society is I know you, and you know me. Now, if you're a GAA man anywhere in the world, I might not actually know you, but I know you. I go to Boston or I go to Moscow, the Seamus Heaney GAA club, I go anywhere like that. If you're a GAA man anywhere in the world, you'll be accepted. You'll have a place to stay. You'll have a job. That sense of community is unrivaled. And in Belfast, particularly in West Belfast, where you've got about, say you've 12 clubs, most of them have very poor facilities. A lot of them would be hoping in due course that they'd be able to use the new Casement every now and again, which will happen because it's going to be a community hub. That's already been made clear. And the fact that we would have something to rival any other sport, like Croke Park, and you got that, you say, wow, well, come on. There are feelings of pride that come from that. It's brilliant. It's easy to motivate kids to say, look, we could be there someday. Antrim needs to get a major push on because we have a huge population and we're not doing sufficient work. We're not sufficiently well resourced as yet to follow the Dublin model. But Casement is the sort of driver that could achieve that change, really start to move us into a completely different place. Because I see it. We have a huge population. There's almost 1 million people living in Greater Belfast. It's the second biggest city on the island. And, you could see conferences being held here, business, political, all the rest of it. I mean, what a facility it will be.
Yeah. Why is there other reasons as to why that potential hasn't been properly explored over the last few decades with regards to Antrim GAA?
Well, I suppose that you would have had a situation where people were coming out of a very dark time in Belfast, inner city Belfast. We were up at there were Waterford people talking to me at the Antrim Waterford hurling game, and I was saying to them, look, if you just look across here, you're looking into Ballymurphy, you're looking into White Rock, which would have been an epicentre of the Troubles. Snipers, machine gun battles, hunger strikers, rioting on a daily basis, huge devastation in communities, sectarian assassinations, all around Corrigan, just where we were watching that game, and now it's a sort of an oasis of calm. So at the heart of the Troubles and all of that, in Belfast there was a preoccupation with daily survival and everything that was going on around. So it was a huge stumbling block, and it reversed a lot of the progress that had been made in Antrim during the 60s, 50s and 60s. And some football teams, like for example the Ardoyne Kickhams, were completely decimated. I think they lost 12 of their first team during the Troubles. Prison, murder, all the rest of it. So there's no doubt that we're not in the trajectory that we should be on. There's a lot of good work being done now at grassroots level. We have big numbers, new clubs like St. Bridget's, etc. But Casement Park will be very, very important to elevate us, to bring us up to a more, I don't like to use the word professional, it's not a word I like to use in the context of what we do, but more serious, and will raise our standards. There's no doubt about that it will do that. And obviously resources are massively important, and that's going to be a key driver for resources. So for all those reasons, and of course it'll get rid of a shocking eyesore. I mean, I don't know if you've been up to see it. You should go up and look at it. You just go, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's shocking.
You talked there about a lot of the progress being undone after the 60s. Have the other sports suffered a similar fate? You look at something like Star of the Sea, for example, a brilliant club that was obviously decimated throughout the Troubles as well itself. And I guess if you fast forward to now, you've got, rugby and soccer with their gleaming new stadiums. Is that emblematic of the GAA being left behind at all?
I think that, in general, people would say, well, isn't it just typical of the North? John Hume said once, if you want to know the sectarian nature of the North, look where the motorways go. So all the motorways were from Belfast out to Hollywood, out to Bangor, all exclusively Protestant, to Ballymena. There's a motorway to Ballymena, population maybe 25,000 people. Motorway on to Coleraine, motorway that goes as far as Craigavon, and then a motorway that went to the edge of Tyrone, but didn't proceed into West Tyrone. A motorway that moves from Belfast, stops at Tombridge before it comes to Fenian country, and then I think the fourth biggest or third biggest city on the island, Derry City, no motorway. So you've got from Tombridge to Derry City, you've got 45 miles, no motorway. And so people would say, well, look, isn't it just typical? Gleaming new soccer stadium, and the irony of it is the amount of help that the GAA gave Irish soccer and helping them with their bid, showing them how to put it together, because it had to be cross-community. So three sports were getting grants and awards at the same time. Fergal Doherty, the great Derry footballer, the famous heavy hitter who used to, a lot of his big hits are on YouTube. His firm put the roof on the new Ravenhill, and you've got these sparkling new stadiums, and Casement sitting as it is.
It's Brolly in conversation with you, Owen. You're welcome back. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Conversation there, Joe Brolly, always incredible to listen to, and I guess that point there that he makes at the end about the cross-community nature of getting this thing up and running is a really interesting one if you go back through some of the history of Casement Park, because what you might have heard, anybody who was with us in the first half an hour of the show, was a very quick mention of the sporting facility that might have been built on the old side of the maze out near Balmoral, and that was supposed to be their gleaming new multi-purpose stadium, which of course was originally shelved before the 3 project plan in 2011. So that's the very brief historical context into the conversation that we kind of that we didn't play at the very start there.
So the main problem seems to be that there is an ongoing legal process where there has been objections through the judicial review process, where local residents are objecting to the plans to redevelop the stadium.
Yes, so we're into the second of those controversies, and it will play out after Easter, and we need to let due course take place, I guess, on that front, and we will know over the next couple of months if there is going to be another roadblock. It is not the only roadblock, of course. The biggest one, arguably, was when the executive collapsed, what is it now, 5 years ago at this point, when things looked like they were going to, the wheels were going to be, it's a ridiculous amount of time, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that was the first executive. There has been one since, but it has also collapsed.
Yeah, well, the initial, and then there's also this collapse. And then we're going to have May, where there's hopefully going to be a bright new future on a political sense. But what it really seems to me is that if things will all come together nicely on a political level in May, you've got to act pretty bloody quickly to get things over the line here. And what we've seen is that things move slowly. That was one of the voices in that Vox Pop earlier on. This is Northern Ireland. Things don't happen quickly, he said. And it's very, very true. So it's an absolute nightmare. There's no way of putting it any other way.
Okay, let's get back to your bit with Brolly here. Here he is talking about life in Belfast in 2022, and particularly how East Belfast has changed.
You'd be forgiven for thinking immediately, oh well, here we are, here. But we've really moved a long, long way from that sort of sordid sectarianism. The vast majority of parties have moved a long, long way from that, and just are getting on with the business, as John was explaining earlier. But the Casement Park project was so important that the last thing that the GAA could be about it was high-handed. How we take your time, get relationships right at street level there in Belfast. All the things that we've talked about. There could have been easy accommodations made, and in my view, there still could be easy accommodations made. People aren't fundamentally unreasonable, and if you're spending 2, 3, 4, 5 million on the delays between judicial reviews, the delays in getting started, having to go again, consultants, new plan, everything else, you can settle this. You can settle this case for the residents.
What about when you think about the future of this city and, I guess, the GAA in this city? I mean, you've obviously been involved volunteering around the place for quite some time. Have you seen it changed? Have you seen it?
I'm not refusing to do interviews.
And not refusing to do interviews?
No. Yes. I interrupted you there.
No, I was going to ask about what you've seen, how your experience of being a volunteer of the GAA in the community, how that's changed and how that's moving forward over the next little while. Like I mentioned to John earlier on, the East Belfast project has been a very interesting one over the last little while, and the foundation of that club during the pandemic was a brilliant story, and it's not a new story, certainly from what you've been saying here, but I think those sort of moments give people a very clear graph of how things are moving, and that's exactly how sport kind of tells a story sometimes of a place.
Yeah, well, again, a friend of mine in America always says demographics is destiny, and so East Belfast would have been traditionally very, very ferociously loyalist. Now you've got a very, very mixed population, and a growing mixed population. And, racism is dying out. And in East Belfast, like where I've been involved with the groups up there, they've now got, I think, the third highest membership of any club in the north. They have a significant minority of people from the Protestant faith involved. And again, it's these social contacts that are far more important than the games themselves. And the fact that now they're fundraising towards buying ground to build their own facilities. What an endeavour that will be. I mean, you go up there on a Saturday morning now, and there are just squadrons of kids coming in You know, every hour a new squad arrives. It's all country folk, of course, boys from Tyrone and Armagh and all of that, who are leading the charge with it, but overlooking Harland and Wolff, you know, in an area which was notoriously sectarian, to see, you know, Gaelic games being played, and also it's an exemplar to the local community to say, look, there's nothing to fear here. You know, this is all a bogeyman that's being created. You know, the GAA being the IRA at play, that used to be one of the DUP slogans, that the GAA was the IRA at play. People are seeing for themselves now, you know. And the president, of course, of the East Belfast club is Linda Irvine. And Linda, you know, comes from the Protestant tradition. She's an Irish speaker. She got her Irish scholarship in Queen's University on a special programme for adult learners, and all of that is where this society is going.
Can the GAA do more to move away from the idea? Obviously, the IRA plays a ridiculous notion, but to move away from the idea of nationalism, should it be doing more to do that?
Well, I mean, I think that nationalism as a concept is dying anyway. I mean, Ireland is in a sort of a very strong federation of 27 states, and then, I mean, altogether, I think of the 48 European countries and dependencies, 45 of them are either in the European Union, in the European free trade area, like the Scandinavian countries with very, very close links, or are applying to join the European Union. There are only 3 outside: Belarus, Russia, and now the United Kingdom. And so in England particularly, I mean, the Scots are trying to disassociate themselves from this. You know, they never voted for Brexit, but in England they're trying to turn it into a tax haven to continue to do what they're doing with the British territories, which are tax havens, British Virgin Islands, all of that, the Caymans. That was the real reason behind the European Union project. And we see where that nationalism brings you, that xenophobia. We see it in Russia, we see it in Belarus, we see it in England. In Ireland, I think that people are happy to be Europeans now. And increasingly, of course, we go and cheer the team on when they're playing rugby. We cheer the team on when they're playing their big soccer games. But the concept of nationalism, I think that it's dying. It's dying, you know, and it's dying in the north as well, I believe. I think that, you know, we're seeing through Brexit how ridiculous it is, the idea that we should be made to suffer just like the English are suffering now, and that the protocols should be, you know, ignored and international agreements ignored. I mean, it's just so nonsensical, you know. Northern Ireland, or the North, whichever way you want to describe it, has suffered enough, and we're getting a great boon in trade now at the moment. Since Brexit, we've had a great boon in trade. I mean, you look at when I was out in the White House, I met the leaders of the Belfast Chamber of Commerce, Northern Ireland Manufacturers Association, all of them extolling the virtues of us remaining in the European free trade zone, and the massive opportunities that businesses in the north are taking advantage of. It's all a matter of public record. So I think that it's all city. I think this election is an important one. I don't say pivotal, because life goes on anyway, and politics, to a large extent in the north, has often been divorced from real life and reality of your daily life. I mean, during the Troubles, everybody just voted green or orange, you know. But things are very, very different now, and it'll be fascinating to see how it all pans out.
All right, there's an election we can all look forward to, Owen, that hopefully maybe has some impact. The last part of this interview, tell us exactly how this worked.
So I'm chatting to Joe there in the office of John Finucane, who is a Belfast lawyer, who's also an MP for North Belfast, the first nationalist-backed MP for North Belfast. He got more votes than Nigel Dodds in 2019 and got his seat, figuratively speaking, in Westminster in that election. So it was a truly historical election. He was a mayor of Belfast, and he is the son of Pat Finucane, who was murdered at his home in 1989. They're still fighting for full justice on that at the moment. So John Finucane is a figure who's a bit of a hero to many around Belfast, and himself and Joe Brolly are friends. But before speaking to Ger Brolly, I was in the office speaking to John Finucane just for a bit of a play-by-play on the Euros bid, why it's important, and his own role in it.
Well, my understanding is that Windsor Park doesn't have the capacity to deal with a Euro 2028 bid, so it really would need to be Casement, and that is another example of one where needed as to why we need to have some urgency around getting Casement built. It's already been too long, but you know, I think to have one of the most prestigious soccer tournaments in the world coming to our shores here, with the potential, I think, around 7 matches coming into West Belfast, I think it will be a huge boost for the economy, for tourism here. We can show off our famous Belfast welcome, and I think some of the projections that I read showed that for an investment of around 100 million, you could be looking at a minimum return of around 217 million. So economically, it makes perfect sense. But as a sports fan, and I am a big sports fan, I think to see the types of matches that the Euros throw up right on your doorstep, being able to bring your kids to that, having that atmosphere here, I think should rally, I think, all political parties to really push to achieve this. It's a bid that's supported by both football associations on the island, by the IFA and the FAI, and I think that what people want to see here is they want to see political parties work together to secure tournaments like this.
The one, I guess, flying the ointment of that is that the DUP don't seem convinced that Northern Ireland will have a part to play in this. Obviously, the collapse of the executive is a significant part of that. They have been the one, I guess, dissenting voice recently when it comes to this idea that Casement Park will be available.
Yeah, I was critical of the economy minister. I thought it showed a lack of vision and a lack of ambition as to what, you know, we should be bringing to our shores here. But I think the reality is that, you know, Casement Park is going to get built. It's going to be a first class stadium, and I think that you know, sport transcends identity politics here. So football fans will want to see the Euros coming to Belfast. If there's even a remote possibility of that, they will demand that their political parties support the IFA, they support the FAI, and they join the bid to bring that tournament here. So I think a bit of real politic will kick in after the election. We're in a season at the minute whereby I think there is a little bit of silliness from some parties, but I think this is just too big an opportunity to miss out on. And for what it's worth, our party in Sinn Féin are completely committed to this bid, and we want to work with other parties to secure that.
I guess the other element of not criticism of this possible project, but maybe caution around it is people who are involved in Gaelic games in this city and in this county, because there have been so many false dawns in the past with Casement Park. I know for a fact that there are people within Antrim GAA who are very cautious about this idea that Casement Park can be involved in Euro 2028 because it doesn't exist yet, and they thought it would exist a long time ago.
Yeah, I think that's a fair enough analysis. People just want to get the stadium built first, and then we can talk about what matches that it's going to host. There has been progress. It's been painfully slow at times for a variety of reasons, but we do have planning permission that has been granted. The GAA, importantly, remain committed to this project, and that's significant. And I think it's important for Ulster Gaels, but particularly for Antrim Gaels, that the GAA remain firmly behind this project. There is a legal challenge, which I think is due to be heard quite soon. That will be decided one way or another, but I think it's clear that the residents of West Belfast want this, the people of Belfast want this, Gaels want this, sports fans want this. You know, we look with a touch of envy at our friends in rugby and football, and they have Windsor Park and they have the Ravenhill ground as well. And I think that we want to see, you know, a first class stadium, one of Ireland's best stadiums in the country's second biggest city, and it would be so good for Gaelic games, as I say, in both Belfast and Ulster.
And that is the thing, it is part of that 3-step project to redevelop the sporting facilities in this city. You do have further criticism from the DUP, Paul Frew, saying it's sectarian politics, that Casement Park is trying to get the wheels in motion at the moment, and then more local football projects, the football stadia projects have been halted at the moment. He thinks that differentiating the two of them is sectarian politics, but I guess the reality is that it was part of the original plan to upgrade Ravenhill and indeed Windsor Park.
Yeah, I mean, very briefly, without, I suppose, going into it in too much detail, the reason why funding for sub-regional stadia in soccer hasn't been able to be released is because the DUP walked out of the executive. That has a knock-on effect with what the executive are able to commit to as far as new decisions. Casement is not a new decision. My colleague in the Communities Minister, which has remit over sport, Ger Eoin, met and explained this with the IFA and local clubs, and I think they understand and respect that decision. There is a degree of frustration with politics that because one party walked out, we are unable to release money. But I do think that's going to be short term. We will have the election in May. People across the board want to see parties background and working with each other and delivering. So we have big issues like cost of living and health. But for me, I'm always unashamedly biased when it comes to sport. I want to have top class facilities so that children in the next generation have the best options available to them to go on and be the best Gael that they can be, or football player, rugby player, athletics, whatever it is. And I think it's a commitment that the political parties must have. So I think there's a little bit of silliness and probably electioneering whenever Paul Frew is making the types of statements that he's making. I don't really wish to get down into that. I just want to keep my focus on being able to deliver a new Casement Park for everybody in the city.
All right, so that's John Finucane there speaking with you, and you spoke to both of the two lads together.
Yeah, I should mention as well that John Finucane is a former Antrim goalkeeper as well, and himself and Joe Brolly would have played against each other a couple of times, certainly in Club GAA. So the two of them sat down for a chat as well a short time after that. Joe Brolly has joined us. Joe, you just said there that you guys go back a long way.
Well, I can say with pride that my debut in senior football in Antrim, I loved John. All 6'3" of him. He stayed on his goal line.
Fair play to you.
And somebody captured it on video. And to this day, you can see it on YouTube.
Well, you can see it because you keep retweeting it every now and then. That's why you can see it. We should have had this agreed before the interview started that wasn't allowed to be mentioned.
I have to say, you know, even the Lav Jarek supporters laughed. I have to say it was terrific.
Yeah, it was terrific for it was terrific for some people there, not everybody. But Joe's a delight as always. Yeah.
What about being kindred spirits off the pitch? When did you discover that was going to be the case?
Well, I mean, obviously we're very proud of John. You know, he, after the adversity that he came through as a child, with his father being shot and all of that. For him to become the Lord Mayor of Belfast, I enjoyed that. Now, the Lord Mayor's limousine and all, and then of course now the first Sinn Féin MP for North Belfast, and doing a massive amount of work for regeneration in his local community, and someone who's got the right community spirit. And I think you find this in Belfast, sort of working class Belfast, and also with the GAA. Feet firmly on the ground and a vocation for service. So we're very proud of him, I must say.
That sense of vocation, John, obviously, as Joe mentioned, it comes from a place of real hardship. And is that something that still motivates you to this day? Obviously, there is still quite a campaign going on from your own point of view.
I don't know if it motivates me because, there's something in you. As Joe talked before about, when you're a Gael, there's something in you, when it comes to certain things. And for me, the law was a natural thing to be interested and involved in because you have the ability to affect change and help people. And I suppose the extension of that, politics for me isn't that different. It shouldn't be that different because all you're doing is trying to affect change that's positive and help people. And that comes from, your local area to then coming out and talking about bigger issues, the way we were chatting about Casement Park earlier on, and how that's important to deliver on. But I think that it's obviously had a huge impact in influencing and probably shaping my own experiences. But I wouldn't say that my own family's experience drives me on to be involved in politics. Maybe it does. Maybe that's something that other people would be better placed to answer rather than me. But it happened. What happened to me happened to a lot of other people. Happened to many other people. And I think that we're at a time now, particularly in Belfast and the north, where I think people want to see what the vision is for the future. They don't want to necessarily go back and refight old battles from the past, and that's what I'm about. There's going to be things that people are going to disagree on, and that's fine. You can do that in a healthy way, but it's about delivering for people. Again, we're chatting earlier on before Joe came that people are facing real issues here. Cost of living, health waiting lists are the worst on the island. Or if we're talking about sport, we need to see Casement up and running. We need to see proper investment into local sport. That's what people want to see. They don't want to hear me on arguing about something that people are not going to agree on from 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Also, I think that there's no barriers. I mean, I always laugh when I see John, you know, I remember when he was the Lord Mayor and the big limousine was pulling up, you know, with his driver and all. And there he is, you know, he's still doing nets for Lavjarg, you know, and the boys don't pay a blind bit of notice. And we did that thing, do you remember that car wash thing that we did up in North Belfast?
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, and again, he's there. He's just part of the furniture, you know. Nobody makes a fuss out of him. And all that helps to keep you grounded. Obviously,
Apparently it was the first time in the Lord Mayor's history that their office had to keep an eye on Division 1 fixtures because they didn't want to be fixed anything. They'd be going, Lord Mayor, I think you have Rossa away that night, or you've Cargan at home, and you went, oh, right, okay, we'll maybe try and move that to facilitate that.
Yeah, and it's really, and John obviously is you know, important for a number of reasons. You know, his intellectual ability is you know, the way that politics are moving here very, very quickly on the sort of nationalist Catholic side, where there's a really, as you say, the past is another world, and it's about getting on with the business, the real business. And you know, obviously there's still the hangover in the south, particularly, where I have to say I find it very, very irritating that no matter what I said, oh well, you know, but look at what the IRA did 50 years ago and 40 years ago, and no doubt all of that was atrocious. But here, you know, the reality on the ground is that the vast majority of parties, with the sort of dishonourable exception of the DUP, are working to affect change and working together and cooperating very well. So you go up to Stormont, you see that, you actually see the relations that are built between people, the personal friendships. You know, the outlier obviously are the DUP who don't engage, don't talk to anybody. I mean, if you ever went into the canteen, and I mean, the first time I went into the canteen in Stormont, it was hilarious.
What happened?
Well, the DUP sit in the corner with their backs to everyone and don't speak. You know, they don't engage with anyone outside of their own group. And that's essential, I suppose, if you're going to cling to an ideology that doesn't work in the modern world.
You get, I mean, I talked earlier on about my daughter playing county football. I mean, my eldest is first year university over in Scotland. My daughter's just turned 18. I would say, and I would say Joe's probably the same with his kids, you know, if any of that social circle started asking about what your political or religious background is, you'd be laughed out of, you know, whatever social setting you happen to be in. Kids don't care about that. They're caring about their exams, they're caring about university. My daughter's more concerned about who's refereeing our next match, you know, and, you know, that's what their focus is. They're the things that people want to be focusing on. It's, you know, what type of job am I going to get after I go to university? And I think that normality, I think is a bit of a cliche, but it's true, that normality doesn't sell newspapers. You know, it doesn't make a sexy headline on TV news. But the reality is that the majority of people here work and live and exist with each other harmoniously on a daily basis, and that's why I was referencing, I was saying it before you come in, Joe, one of the sort of strange outworkings when the DUP walked out of the executive is that all of the other parties just went, right, we're going to go around them or over them, and you saw a whole swathe of legislation getting passed in a couple of weeks, you know, whether it was integrated education, welfare mitigations, bereavement support for parents who are losing children. Yeah, and I think it's the first in Europe for that. So you have all the other parties saying, right, we're not going to be distracted by one party effectively throwing their toys out of the pram over an agreement between the British government and the European Union. We're going to go around them and over them because we need to deliver for people here. And that's what the majority of people want. And I think Joe's right. I think that's what you are going to see post May the 5th.
The day last week when Jeffrey Donaldson and Jim Allister, etc., you know, were threatening all sorts at one of their rallies, I noticed that on that day, very quietly, you would have seen it on Twitter, but you wouldn't have seen it anywhere else, that the Shankill Women's Centre had come over to the Falls to spend a day with the Falls Women's Centre, you know, and that's the reality here, you know. The old ideas of the Troubles, don't forget now it's 23 years and counting since the ceasefire. It has no daily relevance to our lives. We don't see it. It's an extremely peaceful city. It's got one of the lowest rates of domestic crime of any city in Western Europe. We're very fortunate to live in this society, and my view is that things will just develop organically now in a common sense way, because there's no way that we will go back to the struggle. I mean, the smaller niche sort of dissident groupings who have zero support, genuinely zero support. I mean, we both work in the criminal law. You know, they're in the process now of sort of the dying embers. I mean, they're going to be gone. no one on the, no one, and we have a very well-educated populace, so people just want to get on. My oldest boy's in Boston, the second one's in Dublin, daughter's going to Spain to study. Who cares about this stuff? You want to get on and love and, be free and to feel that you're living in a decent, civilised society, And I think that in a way, this sort of hate that's been poured out over the last while from the DUP and the TUV, etc., it now can be seen for what it is. I have to say, I thought the Simon Coveney thing, obviously none of us want to see that type of stuff going on, and it was very, very frightening for the gentleman in question, but it probably highlighted how ludicrous all of this is that's going on, and how pointless it is in the longer term. I mean, society's moving on here, and if people don't want to get on the train, well, that's a matter for them, really. But it's moving on very, very quickly, like rocketing.
All right, a little bit of context there from Owen about everything that's going on around Casement Park. We'll keep a close eye on when the findings of the latest judicial review are made public in April. Well, that's when the judicial review will start. When it actually gets made public, we'll find out after that. Around about 9:30 this morning. We're a bit late. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. Nigel Mansell's OTB Gold at 1 o'clock. Chloe Mustaki on Coigig at 3 o'clock is a brilliant interview. We've already played you a little clip of that a little bit earlier on. The Sporting Mindset is our retro panel at 4. Luke Keeney is OTB Gold at 6, and OTB Tonight with Joe from 7. We're not finished yet, though, on Wednesday's OTB AM. Colin Buig is standing by to talk to us about Nick Kyrgios next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
I've seen lots of matches now with Everton recently. They're a poor team at the moment, but I don't think Seamus is responsible for it at all. Probably one of the most honest players I've ever seen.
There's a Fine Gael TD on The Tonight Show, doesn't use his name, on about countries, as in other international teams, using regional LOI grounds as training bases. No, mate. That's so passive-aggressive, mate.
We're not mates. Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance plc.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, Nick Kyrgios crashed out of the Miami Open last night with a stereotypical Nick Kyrgios bang. He's had one of those seasons where actually things have started to pick up for him a little bit, and we've expected that perhaps he was getting to a point where he was mature and maturing, and that video's not actually playing for us at the moment, but suffice to say that he lost it a bit, Colin Buig.
That's right, Ger Eoin. Our now monthly men's tennis eruption segment, it seems. And Nick Kyrgios is back, and it's a shame. Grand Slam champion Kyrgios has gone back to his old ways. He was having such a brilliant 2022. But yeah, it all erupted last night. People might have been distracted with the Ireland game. They might have seen it, or they could have seen it on social media. Kyrgios playing his fourth round match at the Miami Open against Jannik Sinner, world number 11. It was the first meeting between the pair. Sinner's one of the best young players in the game. It was a very tight first set. Kyrgios was complaining about the slow court at the start of the set. Never a good sign for Kyrgios when he's complaining about the surface. And then the first kind of eruption really was at 4-all, 40-15 to Sinner, when the chair umpire Carlos Bernardes' walkie-talkie went off. Someone spoke to him, and it actually disrupted the whole match, the whole stadium. You could hear it loud and clear what the other person was saying at the other end. So the play had to be stopped. The point replayed, and Sinner won that game. So Kyrgios wasn't happy about that, but he did take it to a tiebreak. Started a tiebreak 2-1. Kyrgios hits wide, smashes his racket and breaks it. Again, not a good sign, but doable. In the world of Kyrgios, he can go on. But it all turned at 5-3 in the tiebreak, so a very crucial moment, like very, very tight scoreline. Kyrgios was docked a point for what was perceived as unsportsmanlike conduct for talking to the crowd. The chair umpire felt that he was abusing him, the umpire himself, and he docked him a point, which meant that Sinner had 3 set points. Kyrgios double faulted, handing Sinner the first set. Kyrgios walked back to the chair umpire and gave him an absolute verbal lashing, called him every name under the sun, and smashed the racket against the chair multiple times. And then the chair umpire very calmly said, game violation for Kyrgios, which meant he was 1 game down at the start of the second.
Well, I think we can hear that, so we can have a look here. This is beautifully described already, but I think we are going to be able to hear what's going on this time.
First set, Sinner.
Fast set.
By 7 games to 6. You need to say to me, you're talking about
what does that mean? What does that mean? So you give me, what's unsportsmanlike about it? What is unsportsmanlike? But what is unsportsmanlike? But what is unsportsmanlike? I was talking to my friend.
No, you're talking to my friend about me.
And?
You're talking bad
I want to talk to someone now. Get me someone. Get me someone now.
Get me someone.
Game penalty, Mr.
Oh, that's the game penalty. So he starts the second set of game down.
Starts the second set of game down, so Sinner has the break straight away and never really has any problems after that. Wins the second set 6-3, and a big shame for Kyrgios, because I saw the clip and I was like, no. Do you know, I've been defending you for 3 years straight. Like, I thought you had turned the corner here, because he seems like a happy guy. And
he sent you a message on your wedding day and everything.
Do you know what I mean? I thought we had something going on there, but I was disappointed to see him go back to old ways. As I said, he's a Grand Slam champion. Won the Australian Open doubles with his partner Thanasi Kokkinakis in January, and they're through to the semi-finals of this doubles tournament as well at Miami. And he was brilliant at Indian Wells, which is known as the 5th Grand Slam. He took Rafael Nadal to a deciding set. Nadal, who had been unbeaten up to that point this year at Indian Wells, very narrowly lost to him. Destroyed world number 7 Andrei Rublev in this tournament earlier in the rounds. So he has all the talent, as we know. But yeah, he went absolutely nuts on this occasion. Sinner, meanwhile, didn't say a word throughout, just kept his head down and kept him playing. And also, amidst all of that, right in the middle of all that chaos, a fan ran onto the court and got a selfie with Kyrgios. He was happy to oblige.
Oh, wow. Do we know what he said to his mate in the crowd?
Yeah, he tweeted about it afterwards, Kyrgios. So he said, the quote was, this is according to himself, "You could do the job of the umpire. What was said to my best friend that got me unsportsmanlike code violation at 5-3 in the first set tiebreak. With hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line, that was the decision he made because the umpire's feelings got hurt. Get new people." The Nick Kyrgios show.
It's I feel I've come around to feeling a little bit sorry. This is a very different situation from some of the other ones that he's not taking anything out physically on anybody apart from the racket, and this is a different. It does feel like there's a self-sabotage element going on just as he's getting to the point of reaching the potential that he has. So maybe that comes later in his career, but we've spoken before that there's a possibility, the constant possibility of retirement hanging over him. It's hard to know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's kind of like just what Gareth Bale a bit is equivalent for different reasons, kind of a part-time tennis player. But he does seem genuinely happy. I think the girlfriend has a big part to play. They're kind of all over social media together, and he constantly refers to her as his best friend for a guy who has a big circle as it is. And I think she kind of centred him and realigned him. And he posted a few weeks ago a picture from, I think, 2019, and there were visible physical scars in his arm for self-harm. So he went through a very tough time, and he said, he's a completely different person now. So when you see this meltdown happening yesterday, that was a real throwback to a few years ago. But for him, look, there was perceived injustice. It wasn't like he went onto the court unmotivated, which has been a problem in the past. As I said, he annihilated Rublev, who's one of the world's best players, a couple of days ago, like really destroyed him. And it's a bit like, when you say a child's being quiet in another room, you're a bit worried because they're being too quiet. It's the opposite with Kyrgios. When he's being quiet, you can be happy because he's focused. He doesn't say a word. It's when he starts getting verbal. Like I said, his first complaint in this match was the surface. It's never a good sign. That's simmering. That means something's about to implode. And yeah, there probably is a self-destructive element in him that, geez, I'm doing very well in my career at the moment, and this is the moment that it all imploded for him again. But look, as I say, he's into the semi-finals of the doubles. He actually won his quarter-final later that day. So maybe he wasn't too affected by it, but it was amazing to me was Sinner's composure, and the umpire, to be fair to him, stood up for himself. And I kind of appreciate that because I think Kyrgios gets away with a lot at the same time, as much of a fan of his that I am.
As we found out this week, as Denzel Washington would say, at your highest moment, be careful. That's when the devil comes for you, and his devils were there last night. Colin, good stuff. Thanks a million.
All right, take it easy.
That's your latest Nick Kyrgios update from our Nick Kyrgios correspondent, Colin Buig. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We'll be live from 7:30 as always tomorrow. Owen's back from Belfast. There's hurling with Tommy Walsh and plenty more to chat through ahead of the weekend's action. If you missed anything on the show, you can catch it all back on the OTB YouTube channel, or you can listen back on podcast. And if you're still having problems with the podcast, get in touch with us by DM on Twitter, or you can talk to us on Instagram as well and tell us what podcast app you're using that is giving you issues. Right now we're going to leave you with Stuey Byrne's post-match thoughts at the Aviva last night.
Ireland 1-0 winners against Lithuania. Troy Parrott off the bench, and just quality, technique, power, and well, a bit like Andorra coming to Ireland's rescue. You know, it's interesting. Keith Andrews was talking this week in advance of the game, and he was noting a dramatic change in Troy Parrott's attitude versus November. And of late, he's been in with MK Dons. He's been playing first-team football. Keith Andrews said he was flying in training. Sometimes you forget how young Troy is what he said, and he's still only 20, and we've just been aware of him for so long. Stuey Byrne, I said there just before the outbreak, we're all hoping he's a bit special. We're hoping he's the kind of player that can score Ireland goals when we need goals, and that's twice now he's done it, admittedly against quote-unquote minnows, but that's twice he's been the man to save the day a touch. Describe the goal for people, because we are talking high-quality stuff here.
Yeah, well, it's been worked down this left-hand side, little ball cut back to Hourahan. He's put it into an area, and Lithuania, give them credit for 96 minutes and 20 seconds. They've literally headed everything that came into the box clear, but on this particular occasion, it's headed out 25 yards. There's Troy Parrott. He's unable to take it straight on, but he's kind of the ball's kind of gone away from him a little bit, so his touch is good, gets it out of his feet, and when it's out of his feet, you can see he's kind of at a 90-degree angle to the goal, so he's got to get himself set to really generate enough power. And my God, has he generated power. But what he's done really well is he's kept it on target and he's put it down low, and because it's going through bodies, the keeper can't react. And interestingly enough, he's getting a little bit of coaching, is he? Now, who's that having a word with him? Sorry, I thought he was getting a little bit of coaching, but to be fair to him, he's done everything right. Touch is good, he hits the target, and the keeper, who has been excellent the whole game, can't see it, sees it late, and because it's down low, can't get down low enough either. And it's like we won the Champions League final or something. It's getting crazy. This whole new sense of elation and how people are feeling about the game at the moment is it's fantastic. It's brilliant. I was all set to kind of really talk more about the fact that it was looking like it was going to be 0-0, and my takeaway really would have been, this has been a game maybe for Stephen to really say, he's not going to do it for me, he might do it for me. Who does he really kind of look at and say yeah or no? But it's changed because of Troy Parrott's goal. Now I know we've had 3 or 4 disallowed goals as well. There are other reasons for that, and managers can always say, well, look, we scored 4 goals, they were disallowed. People are clever enough to realise, well, look, it was good in patches, but that goal has certainly just given everybody an injection of serious energy
and excitement about what this guy could do now. 20 years of age, that was a big moment. If there was an issue with the performance, 4 disallowed goals notwithstanding, it was creativity at times. And when we saw Jeff Hendrick off the bench, we saw Jason Knight off the bench, I think we saw a slight difference in what we've seen for the first 55-60 minutes. And so Stephen Kenny will look at a few of the players who started and will think, oh, we're a touch too blunt for what I'd like. But then also it's difficult because if you have a lot of players playing together for the first time this evening, at times just like players almost just that touch out of sync. It just wasn't quite clicking. It was close to clicking in periods and never quite did. It was in patches, and they never really looked like a group who were totally au fait with each other, which is understandable under the circumstances.
I think Stephen will look at one of the big things I think that has been that sort of the bedrock towards us starting to really improve as a team is that in the shape he has played, yes, there's been good movements, we've moved the ball well, but there's also been a level of consistency about it and a level of discipline about it. And tonight I think Stephen would have been looking at that. He would have been saying to these players, go out, impress me, but impress me playing the style I want us to play. I want us to play this arc of a back five. I want my two centre midfielders to be dependent, to be central, to be one of them's getting on the ball, one of them maybe getting into the box, to maybe play rather than play side by side, maybe play a little bit off each other, one in front of the other, but play kind of close together. And then you got that front three, the movement of the front three, maybe alternating. You got Callum Robinson, who constantly moves, so therefore the other two have to fill in spaces. They also have to maintain that there's always one left, one right, so on and so forth. I don't need to kind of go on about this. I think people know what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So therefore, when you change it up and you want players to go in and impress, you're saying to them, go in and impress, show me what you can do, but I want to see that you can fit into the kind of style of play that I want to do. And I think there's a couple of takeaways from that, yes. There's a couple of others maybe not ready for it yet. What can tend to happen with new players when they come into a team like this, or they come into it, they get a kind of a start like this, they can be over keen to impress, and they can be running around, and they can take their eye off the ball, and sometimes just stand still. And to be fit, Keane was a good example, good player, has a lot of hope there, but just a little. He was just thinking 2 moves ahead all the time, and not focusing on the basics.
He was edgy.
Get it out of your feet, move the ball. Yeah.
Josh Cullen was looking on. We didn't see him come on. We saw the impact Jeff Hendrick made, and his range of passing instantly almost put Scott Hogan in, and just had a presence out there and got things moving higher tempo. So what are we saying about Conor Howard and Brown this evening?
Brown I like. I think Stephen likes him as well. I think Brown will always he'll always compliment the likes of a Cullen or a Hendrick, because he gets into the box and he gets goals, and he's proven that he can get goals, and he can get goals on big occasions as well. Hourihane, the question mark is still there, unfortunately. For somebody who's got such a technically good left foot, set pieces are just not good enough. He's not hitting the mark regularly enough to say, do you know what, I can offer something here. And I still think that discipline is not there. He drifts left, and
there is something missing in his general play for someone with that technique.
Yeah, and there was a couple of instances even in the first half where he was guilty of maybe little flicks around the corner, and he was giving the ball away, and it's just sloppiness. You can't afford players to be doing that for you at this level. And it's just silly things, so the question mark is still there for him, unfortunately. I think he's got a big role to play in the team in terms of within the squad. He's got that quality that you can bring him off the bench, and he can produce something for you. But I think Stephen will be very reluctant to start him.
Yeah. Nathan Collins, man of the match. Why? Well, actually, can they take it off him now, because it's Troy Parrott, but he's the official man of the match.
I think he's used the ball very well in the game. He didn't really put a foot wrong, to be quite honest. He was, a lot of won his headers, did his defensive duty, to be quite honest. I think he kind of had to give it to an Ireland player. Not too many others really impressed, but he was consistent. Never really put a foot wrong. Certainly tried to step into the game on opportunities when space was there, and did it quite well. But just consistently a very good performance from him.
Matt Doherty had an interesting game, didn't he? Like, there were times he was like Messi going through the box, and then once or twice final product wasn't quite there. I mean, he took a shot from crazy angle at one stage when he should have crossed it, but then he's these moments of outrageous quality where he does beat a couple of players.
Well, he's got that in his locker, Matt, and it's almost he kind of does it under camouflage. It's not
he's not moving at high speed.
His body language doesn't tend to suggest I'm going there. It's almost like he can do it in slow motion.
Yeah.
But he has that ability to ghost.
Yeah.
A bit like a Paul Scholes, or he can ghost into areas. And
but you're kind of thinking afterwards, how did he beat 2-3 players?
Well, I can tell you how he bet 2 or 3 players. He kind of made his own look a little bit, because he was committed to taking them on. When you take on players, when you commit players or commit defenders, when they're a little bit on the back foot, you tend to make your own look, and you can see they were backtracking the defenders, and they were kind of poking at the ball, and because he was advancing towards them, he was committing himself. He kind of almost made his own look.
Yeah.
But he was very unlucky not to score. The keeper done extremely well. Not too many goalkeepers in this day and age, Joe, use their feet to save low shots like that. It was a bit old school from the keeper, but he's pulled it off. He's gotten himself in the way. But he was unlucky, Matt, I have to say, lucky not to score.
On the left-hand side, Ryan Manning, saw lots of the ball in the first half in particular, did put in a cross for the Ogbene disallowed goal, had a few so-so deliveries. I don't think he's probably done enough there to nudge James McLean or Enda Stevens out of that at birth. He did okay.
He did okay, Joe. Yeah, I think you've nailed it. He did okay. Very important that you have good cover on that left-hand side of the pitch, especially as part of an overall squad. Look, and there was, when McLean came on to take up that left wing back position, Manning moved into that left side of the back three. In the same way that Coleman plays on the right hand side, and there's possibly a role for him there as well, but from his point of view, he's got, how many caps has Manning got? He's got 5 caps, so it's game time for him. Stephen will have a good look at him and think, yeah, he can do a job for me. He's certainly a player that can develop in either that left wing back position or left side of a tree, but he's good cover to have.
Yeah. So sum it up for us then. If people didn't catch the game this evening, they were listening. Obviously, look, the Troy Parrott goal, they're certainly going to see. What would you say about the previous 94 minutes then? What do we see from Ireland overall?
We're not good enough yet to make such changes. I think balance is so important for us to play the way Stephen wants us to play. He'll definitely look at some of the players that started today. He'll think 2 or 3 maybe aren't up for it or don't suit the kind of style of football, or even I'll say it again, that type of formation he wants to play. So that'll be the takeaway for me. Need to be a little bit cuter maybe in terms of when we get ourselves into position to score goals, because I know Nathan kind of constantly said that we had the ball in the back of the net 4 times, but there were 4 offside decisions, and the offside decisions were given because we had 2 or 3 Lithuanian defenders who were fairly on the ball, and we were probably a little bit rush of blood to the head stuff from us. So international level, maybe just need to kind of focus a bit more on quality.
Okay, Stu, thanks for coming this evening. We've got a great moment to finish with. Troy Parrott,
enjoyed that, yeah.
Man of the moment. That is us done here from the Aviva Stadium. A 1-0 win for the Republic of Ireland, which keeps the run going for Stephen Kenny, now 8 unbeaten. We are going to say goodbye from the Aviva OTB AM, live with you from 7:30 tomorrow morning. Keep an eye out for Twitter Spaces, because Nathan Murphy and Shane Keegan and Johnny Ward are going to continue to chat around this game, and on our social channels more from Stuey, Byrne there, and of course OTB AM 7:30 tomorrow morning.
Now you're very welcome back. So we are going to turn from the Republic of Ireland to Canadian football, because it's been an extraordinary 12 months. On the Olympic front, the women's team won gold in Tokyo, and now over the weekend the men's team have qualified for their first World Cup since Mexico 1986, and what they're calling it over there is the Kevin Kilbane bounce. There is a sense in the Canadian media that you put a man with that kind of talent into a country and there is a natural contagion effect. So they're saying 36-year gap, Kilbane arrives, they call him Zinedine, and here they are. So there is huge excitement at what happens next. Kevin Kilbane, hello.
Hi, Joe. You know that you're still full of it. You know that. Yeah, you don't change. You don't change. But anyway, there you go. Why change?
Why change when it's not working? The Kilbane bounce, huh? Listen, you arrive in this country and it's liftoff. Unbelievable.
Well, you know, it's yeah. I mean, it has been incredible. I mean, do you know this stage of qualification for Canada? They haven't been at this actual stage where you go into the octagon where it's 8 teams since 1993. So you look at it where they've come from. I think the hope and expectations going into this final round was might nick a playoff spot. You know, try to compete with the 2 big powerhouses in Mexico and the USA. Try and compete with them and stay ahead of Costa Rica, Jamaica. And Honduras, who are probably the next best teams, but they've exceeded expectations, and it's been an unbelievable turnaround for them. Just a quick one that I just put in a bit of context that the current coach John Herdman, when he took over 4 years ago, I think it was 4 years ago last Thursday, they played the first game against New Zealand in Murcia, Spain, with 75 fans in attendance, 75 fans, and it shows where they've come from because the turnaround is incredible.
What? 75 fans?
Yeah, 75 fans for John Herdman's first game 4 years ago in Mercia against New Zealand.
Ronan outside just said they're calling it Kilbanada.
Good for the pun, El Ronan.
Oh dear, God, that's extraordinary. So, generally, interest in soccer, I presume, in Canada. Where is it in the pecking order? Does it get good figures? They're watching the MLS, I presume, or are they watching European football? I mean, when you open the Canadian newspapers or turn on the sports shows on TV, where is good old soccer featuring generally?
They're way down the pecking order, way behind. I mean, hockey's number one without a doubt here. Ice hockey's number one, and then you'll have basketball with the Raptors, who of course won the title a couple of years ago. So the Raptors will be big here as well. Blue Jays as well. So you're fourth or fifth really down the pecking order. You mentioned the women's soccer as well, that has really gone on to a new level. They've had a few issues, I think, within Canada soccer over the years. They've lost some really big players. Owen Hargreaves was one of the high-profile players that went on to play for England after playing underage with Canada. Begovic would be another one that played underage with Canada. And they had issues trying to keep hold of players. Now, realistically, there's bona fide stars here, Joe. Like, you know, Alphonso Davies, he's, well, certainly in my opinion, I think many opinion, he'd be the best fullback in world football right now. Probably the best left-sider in world football. He's only played actually half the game. Jonathan David, who undoubtedly will go to the Premier League, I think, in the summer. It will be 50-60 million, I would imagine, the transfer fee for him from Lille. And you've got one or two bona fide stars. Stefan Eustáquio, who's just moved to Porto as well, will be another one in midfield. You'd love Eustáquio, Joe. He's right up your street for the type of player he is. If you look at the first goal that Canada scored yesterday, a lovely little through ball that he just played in behind the defence for Kyle Larin to score. There's three or four, I'm talking real stars in the team, real top class players, and there's a mixture of I wouldn't want to say workmanlike, but players that you know, if you're looking at in comparison to our Irish team, we'd go, well, look, would they get in our team? They'd struggle to get in our team, or they'd certainly be on a par. But when you've got a mixture and you have two or three really top-class players, they make the difference. So it's going to be interesting to see where Canada go when they play against some of the big nations. You know, they're talking here now who they're going to get in the World Cup. Will it be Brazil? Obviously, everybody wants England. And just going back to your point there, where it falls in the pecking order, the Euros here got way bigger figures, viewing figures than the MLS would have got. But now all of a sudden, as I was saying, there are stars that young players and youngsters can look up to. Not least the women's game that has done so well, but now in the men's game, there's bona fide stars that's going to carry the nation through. So it's really exciting times ahead. Yeah, it
really could be. And the context is, of course, Canada will co-host the 2026 World Cup. So in terms of a 4 or 5 year period here, it is really exciting for Canadian football. Kev, I was reading, so in the last 12 months, Canada have played 24 games. Now, that's a hell of a schedule. 24 games, they won 17, drew 4, lost just 3, each of those by a single goal. And as you mentioned, 14 of the 24 were qualifiers, and they were without Alphonso Davies for 7 of those 14. But, geez, 24 games in a year.
Yeah, well, they've had they had the Gold Cup here. That again, it wouldn't be something that I'd be too familiar with. The Gold Cup is the CONCACAF Championship. I suppose on a par with the Euros or Copa America, but it's not on a par standard wise. But obviously, it's the North American Championship, so that's every 2 years. So that was in the summer as well that they had the Gold Cup. So there's a lot of games there. And I spoke about before, the qualification that Canada have had to go through to get to the stage they were actually at, which is the Octagon, the 18 qualification. They've had, I remember, what was it, not long after I arrived here, they played Haiti in a playoff game to qualify for this standard. And they blew all the teams away that they played against. They had way better players. But historically, Canada have got to the stage where they've played, certainly in Central America, Honduras, El Salvador, Costa Rica, and I wouldn't want to say bottle it, but they've found it really difficult to go to these places and get results. They've had limited or no success there, and now all of a sudden they've gone to these places. They beat El Salvador and beat Honduras convincingly, and they also got a draw in the Azteca against Mexico. They drew with the US in the US and beat Mexico and the US at home. So the standard has taken them on to the next level. Yeah, with the players, they've got John Herdman, the coach, who's from Newcastle in England. He has really give belief to the team as well. But I think the region itself, Joe, where Canada have been in comparison to where they should be, they've been in the doldrums for a long time. Yeah.
And Kev, what's the standard like in the moment, or at the moment, say across CONCACAF? Like you mentioned Mexico, you mentioned the US. These are very, very respectable teams.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the world rankings on Mexico and the US, they're both in the top 15. I think they both still are. They definitely were going into the last round of fixtures. Mexico, Joe, personally, and my knowledge would be similar to your knowledge, Joe, on Mexico, where we would have watched them and been excited by them at World Cups in the past. They've caused shocks.
Let's be honest. Our knowledge of Mexico is John Aldridge letting that linesman have it.
Yeah, that's true. But I remember that game in '94, Joe. You're a bit younger than me. You probably won't remember it as clear as me. I was obviously, 17?
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.